Can we switch us to microphone?
You're on.
Awesome, thank you. Welcome everyone to the MSA School Board meeting for January 23rd, 2023. I have to get the year right. So we did not do a workshop tonight, so we won't have a recap on that one, but we will reschedule that one as soon as possible. So thanks for everyone being flexible with your schedule and coming in a little bit later. So Joseph, could I ask you to read our mission?
Yeah, so our vision is to be an innovative and sustainable model of academic excellence for all students that creates a well-rounded, lifelong learners and global citizens. Our mission is we provide accelerated and inclusive curricula and instruction in all subjects with an emphasis on math and science.
Great, thank you. Start with roll call. So Dan Anderson here, Corey Schneid. Here. TJ Johnson.
Here.
Maggie Bergrath.
Here.
Jeff Payne.
Here.
Here. Jennifer Bartle.
Here.
Wendell Sutton.
Here.
And Teresa Ward.
Here.
Let's do the reps, Noah and those in here. Thank you. First up, item number 4, approval of agenda conflict of interest. So anyone have any conflict of interest for tonight's discussion? We're clear. If not, can we get an approval of the agenda for tonight?
I motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second it.
30 seconds. Any discussion?
We need to remove 13A.
Which one?
13A.
Yeah, okay. We can strike 13A recap of the workshop.
Okay. I would like to ask to remove from the consent agenda policy 102.1 and maybe add it for discussion in a couple months after we've had the training.
Okay, it's the first, you're talking about the first read of racial equity and inclusion?
Yep, it's a new policy and I'd like some time to think about it. And
Is this one that we drafted, or this one from the?
This is the students, no, it's not a model MSBA policy. It's an initiative coming down from the April 2021 petition from the students. And it implements the changes that we were mandated and agreed to make already. The board already said they would do these things in July 2021 improvement plan. So there's 4 sections that we can review of the improvement plan where the board already did discuss it. And hence that's why it's in the consent agenda. So it was prepared by the students with the help of admin.
And looking at it, it doesn't look like the whole policy loaded. It looks like it only has a front page.
I had the same problem. It just,
You know what I mean? Is it anybody else too?
I got
I'm
4
only getting 1
pages.
page and I think it's about 4 pages. I don't know.
Yeah, it was about 4 or 5 pages.
It's not my fault. I don't know. So we might need to have to put it in next month in the consent agenda.
It worked for me.
I just would like to discuss it a little bit more. It's such a big policy.
It is, maybe we should discuss it
Well,
tonight.
Absolutely.
Well, not
we should
tonight. I don't
discuss
wanna
it, but we
discuss
shouldn't
it
hold it off for
tonight.
months, like you said.
How about if we
Well, I don't
next
think
month
there's a
put it
rush.
in the discussion items, we'll get the whole policy loaded. We can put it in discussion and decision there.
So what,
Next month in a discussion, as a discussion topic.
Can we discuss it tonight? I
I'd
mean,
like
it
that.
has been
No,
since
I don't
July
want to discuss it tonight.
2021.
I'm not prepared.
July
I really wanted to
2021.
have,
we have
the
not had this in
training
front of us since
first.
July 2021, you're saying?
No.
This document?
The kids have just prepared this, but we have known that this initiative needs to happen. And none of us did it. The students did it.
I think what we're talking about right now though is the agenda, right? And how do we handle it? So I guess what I'm trying to focus us on is how do we want to address this 102.1? Right now it's reading as a first read. So I feel like we could do a first read tonight, which hopefully all you guys did your first read, assuming the link worked for you. But I think it is also, the question is, can we have a discussion before we approve it, which we're not approving tonight, right? It would be a first read tonight.
well, if it's in the consent agenda.
And
For
actually,
first
in the,
read.
in the board folder, the whole policy is there. For some reason, it just didn't copy onto the agenda part, but it is in everybody's board, it's in the board packet. the whole
Yeah, my
policy.
link worked.
Yeah, okay.
But-
So it is in the board packet that the board got, so.
So I guess to your question, I mean, I don't think nobody's objecting to having a discussion about it, but would it
Yeah,
make
I
sense
just
to
would
have a
like some
discussion, please?
time to,
There's no excuse not to be prepared. It's been since July
Excuse
2021.
I'm
We got
asking
this
for some
document
time.
like half a week ago. It's not
I just need some
2021.
time
We
to
can discuss
think
the
about it.
points.
Why do we have to rush
We
into
can discuss the
anything?
initiatives that have already
You
been
know
approved by
what?
this
You
board.
pressured us to approve something last time and you had made a mistake.
That
So
was already mandated too.
let
Are
me
you referring to
have-
510.1?
let me just have some time to discuss it. Maybe after we've had the training with Paula. That's all I'm asking. It would just be a no vote for me then, I guess, if you leave it in the consent agenda. That's
When you're
fine.
not prepared to vote, yes.
No, I'm prepared to vote then. I just don't think that you're being very considerate.
You know, the disparate impact that occurs, that has occurred, that has been acknowledged to have occurred, that's not considerate. These kids deserve nothing but positivity when we discuss their issues. They had the guts to bring them in April. They had the guts to sit through it and wait for the improvement plan to come out. I feel shamed, I feel full of shame that I did not bring this. We as a board sit here at the governance level and we try to get the words right? We want the words right, but these kids are getting the action right.
And that's the reason why we should put due consideration. I mean, I don't even have the link to the full document.
It's in the board folder.
Yeah, but I just saying, we have to give it due consideration. I love the fact, I mean, we would have had DEI training today, that didn't quite fit. So I'm not saying put it out for months and months, but, you know, I mean, I think Jennifer is asking for something pretty reasonable. Maybe we should discuss it tonight also to get it started, so we can all understand this a little better. That might be a first step, how about that?
And maybe review the improvement plan together.
So should we move it to the discussion part of the agenda? Let's start with that, and then we'll find out what we can do after that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm open to suggestions. I would still consider that this would have been the first read.
Yeah, yeah.
And I know we normally read it twice before we approve it, so I'm fine. I guess what I'm hearing on the floor is having a discussion about it. Maybe that'll move us further faster. So the first read I would propose then we keep it in the first read. It's not approved, but we add a discussion item. Would that work, Jennifer?
Well, I'm not really prepared to talk about it tonight because my proposal was to talk about it at the next board meeting or after we've had the training. So I don't know what.
These are basic human rights.
There
I
are
wish that-
comments, I'm even gonna make
This
comments.
is the right
In
to
terms
education,
of the
to be free of
language too,
discrimination.
there's some things that need to be added to the language, there's some things for further consideration, so.
That's all I'm
It's-
asking.
it's not a
is
done
just to
deal.
discuss it. I just don't like the pressure that you're putting on me to make a decision right now. I
The
feel like
pressure
it's.
about solidifying
Excuse me,
initiatives.
I feel like you're being very disrespectful.
Yeah,
I do. I owe you all an apology. I am sorry. I am out of order. I'm out of line.
I guess right now the discussion is the proposal, or I'd like to make a motion then that we add agenda item 15, it would be G, which is further discussion on, to understand what questions people may have, the board may have about this policy so that we can move it forward. Is that okay?
Sure. That would be great. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions, comments about the agenda? Then I think we have two motions. Can I ask for all those in favor as amended? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? So I believe the agenda passes 9-0 as amended with items, just let me check that. G, which is, what do we call this, racial equity?
Racial equity and inclusion.
So what we have next are monthly celebration. This month we decided to celebrate Konnichiwa. So thank you for all of your hard work. I understand that on the agenda later, you will be stepping down, so we'll talk to you about that, but you've been here with us a number of years.
So I've been on the board 3.5 years, and I was a student for 7 years. When I was younger, and now I have taken on the position teaching college, and it's just getting to be too much. So I'm gonna have to step down. But I do want to mention that I want to thank Ms. Bergraff and Ms. Richards and Ms. Kurtowski, who are also teachers of mine. And some of the stuff I've learned, I'm still actively teaching in my classroom for you guys. So I want to thank you guys and everyone else throughout the years.
Thank you very much, Cody. You want a photo?
I guess we'll do a picture.
Gotta get the picture.
Yeah, you come in the back.
Can we get everyone?
Okay, you guys gotta scoot in a little bit.
A
I
little
don't
bit.
have that wide angle of the iPhone. Then I go silly. All right, thank you.
You'll get there.
I'll get there one day. So right here is the one that you can share with me.
All right, item
And this is the one-
5, sorry, item 6 is open forum. Did anyone
Is it okay?
sign
if I
open?
paste this
We
one?
have. Okay. So, next up is open forum. So we'd asked to try to keep the comments less than 5 minutes per topic. And if you can, please come to this gentleman. And first up I have is Andy Jacobson on the tour of WLA.
Thanks, awesome. I teach Fine Health. I have 8th and 9th graders currently here at MSA. And we, 3 of us, went over to WLA today, toured the whole school, gym and all the classrooms. We were able to look into a lot of classrooms with classes going on, and the stuff that we saw seemed very consistent with what we do at MSA. The learning, the kids, they were really great from our experiences at thought. So yeah, that's all I wanted to tell the board as far as the merger goes on. The kids were great. Didn't see any issues at all, and it was just very kind. The whole administration was very good.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, great. Next up, I have Carrie O'Keefe, also on the tour of WLA.
I've never come to one of these before, which I thank you, yeah. This is really, it's a really important topic for me, and I got the chance to go to WLA today to experience kind of what goes on there, the teaching styles, and it was really, really amazing to see these kids. I mean, they are showing Dragon Fire already. They are like above and beyond. I mean, they're walking in straight lines. Nobody is shouting. They are raising their hands. They are waiting their turn. They are holding doors open. They're greeting strangers into their classrooms. And not only were the kids awesome, but I felt like the teachers there, we would make like a really great community with them. They were very welcoming. They were poised. They were intelligent. They stood up and answered questions. They were making their rounds around the room. I mean, they were so respectful and awesome to us, just, coming into their school. So it was really fun to see. The building is awesome, but I think overall, I think it's just a good fit for us as we grow, and knowing that changes can be scary, but if we don't take those risks, we don't know what opportunities we're missing out on. And if you don't change, you don't find ones. So that's basically all I wanted to talk about, was just how great my experience was today. So thank you for setting that up with.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up, approval of minutes from our December meeting. So, anyone like to make a motion to approve our minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the
Wendell
minutes.
first,
I'll second.
Maggie seconds. I had just one comment if we switch to discussion. The communication committee, I made a note because I think it was a little bit sparse in terms of how we described it, discussed it. And I would just say that we decided in our discussion that we didn't need to set up a board committee. And I just wanted to share it as an example of how we do our notes. You know, it's like, there was a couple comments in there, but there wasn't that conclusion. And I think that was one of the feedback to us was how do we, you know, if you look at the notes from 6 months later, what was that discussion about and what did we conclude? So we could add it to this one, but more important is that as we take notes for the future, we look at that. So, anyone, anything else? Did you catch anything? No? All right, then I'm going to ask that we approve the meeting minutes from December. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? So the minutes pass 9-0. Next up, student representatives. You guys have anything to share tonight?
I'll just share like a couple things. One thing, I've heard a lot of good things about the vending machines. And, you know, I just want to say thank you to Mr. Vetch and everybody for making that happen, because I know like with COVID, and for me, I like think OGMSA when I came in, when I was in the year 2017, when I was a 6th grader. And, you know, with COVID coming in, we lost a lot of that, a lot of what I felt made MSA. So like a lot of the activities and, you know, one thing were the vending machines everywhere, and seeing that coming back was something really cool. And also I saw flyers around for the dodgeball tournament, so thank you, Mr. Heyman. That was also another big thing that we did when I was younger, so it's really nice to see that happening. Another thing is that I'm in something called Minnesota Youth in Government, and I get to work really closely with like the Senate and the House of Representatives, and I was the presiding officer for the National Issues Forum this year. And we get to like talk about international and national issues with around 200. I get to lead a group of 200 students from Wisconsin and Minnesota. And I was re-elected into an official position for next year. So I'm just happy to keep on leading and doing that. So that's all I wanted to say.
All right, thank you. So then I think we can switch to Mr. Hernandez.
I have 5 minutes, that means I'm gonna talk really fast, but the dashboard with the diversity, equity, and inclusion will come later in 13, so I'm just gonna pass through that. There was some information from Jill and Raymond for the SPED updates on some of the issues that were brought up in the investigation. Communication update, you know, it's something we worked on over the winter break. Justin is working on some things too. We got the, as that was brought up last month, we linked the athletics calendar into the community calendar, so that's all, everything like community calendar will have that in there as well. But if people just want the athletics, that's in there because it's through an R school because of this, how the athletics are running, and Steve handles that calendar really well, so everything is up to date and those information go out and we can set it up so we can send out tweets. So we're addressing a lot of this right now. So a lot of the issues with the calendar have been addressed, and Justin is looking at a possible thing to make it even better. So we're addressing a lot of that. So just want to give you an update on that. We have our annual site visit from our authorizer, Student Achievement Minnesota, coming up on February 9th. The enrollment registration, this is an update where we're at right now as far as registrations, enrollments that come in. We have a total of 419 that have come up to date. And then 2 things is the financial report. This is something the board asked last month, was to run a scenario, and you have those handed out to you. Wendell asked it, because it's the print so small, so we Emma printed those out, so you have those too. But there's 2 printouts there. One is, if we do not, why are we expanding? What happens if we don't? That is the first one. And there's some, you can see some of the assumptions in that. A lot of those numbers were from Jenny Abb from Bergen did these 2 reports were from the enrollment she did last fall when we were doing our bonding. So some of those numbers are maybe a little bit off. But the assumption does not look very good if you look at, if we don't expand. You can kind of see next year, we're already going into the deficit. You know, we're in the red, like around $70,000 next year. And you can see over the next 5 years, our fund balance goes from over $2 million down to $600,000. So we're drastically bleeding out over the next 5 years if we do not expand. Joelle wanted to meet with me this morning and just, you know, because she runs these, I mean, she is so on top of our enrollment numbers. I mean, wow, she does a fabulous job of that. She goes, you know, your numbers are a little bit off and this is kind of rosy. It's much more grim than this for the number she's running. She has about 40 less students than what we would have based on the intent to return form. So this is nice. It's not as maybe what it could be. So just so you know, those numbers don't look extremely positive for us. And this is with next year reducing by 2 teachers in those numbers too. Not that it has to be teachers, it can be staff, right? We're gonna have to make some changes in this. So that is our possible budget if we do nothing. The second one Jenny ran is what does a merger look like? What's the benefits of merging with WLA? And the positive is that, you know, Bergen does WLA and ours. On this budget, we were extremely conservative and we think it's better than what it is, but you can kind of see by looking at the expenditures and revenues down at the very, very bottom where we're running, you know, almost at the end of the 5 years, we're at about $800,000 surplus at the end of each school year, where our fund balance grows to over $6 million, which provides a lot of benefits to a district. It provides opportunities for our students. It provides opportunities for staffing and salary increases. So it gives us a lot more positivity for the future than the other option.
I just had a question.
Yeah.
I know that it says less adjustment for grade 11 PSEO, but what do the numbers like really mean, like in the red parentheses?
Okay, so we don't get funded for students that are in PSEO. So even though our enrollment may say it's, let's say 592 students, if there's 50 of them that are in PSEO, we'll get funded for 542 students. So they're in the enrollment, but if they're in PSEO, we don't get the state funding for them. We do get in lease aid, but that's a different, so that's the adjustments there. Good question. So there's a lot to mull over, but I mean, as we get more, and once we can get more detailed into it, because we haven't had a chance to really sit down if there's something the board decides that, yes, let's move forward on a merger. We can get really nitty gritty into the budget, as this is kind of that budgeting process, but this is assumptions that Jenny Abbs ran, giving some of our enrollment assumptions with our bonding last fall, and going forward with, you know, 2% increase from the state, you know, 2% inflation, but we know it may be better than that. Actually, it sounds like the governor is going to give schools 4% next year, which is a positive, followed by 2%, but then the possibility of inflation increases from then on. So that's a positive. So that just even makes that amount even more. But it still doesn't help us if we do nothing. It may decrease the hemorrhaging a little bit, but if you look long term, if we don't do anything, our revenues are capped. All we're going to have is that 2%. I don't know how that'll go with our bond, you know, for our bond holders. You know, if we are not increasing in revenues, how will that go over with our bond holders in the long term? So it doesn't look extremely positive if we do nothing, and that's what you guys wanted to report. So we had Jenny run these numbers for us, and this came from her, not from us. So.
Yeah, thanks for doing that. I think for our community, it might be nice, and I'm speaking on their behalf, you know, like we often send a summary out for the board, but I think this might be too much detail. So maybe if we just take like the assumptions of your or Jenny's enrollment over time, right? And then you have the annual surplus you can see on this chart. If we do nothing, 2023, 24, we start to lose money, right? So that's when at least we're spending more than we're taking in, right? So we start cutting into our general fund, right? I think that sort of thing, as well as that general fund in the bottom, would be nice to compare versus a potential merger, which is another option, right? So if we can get that boiled down such that it could be like a chart that we
How
can send
about
out.
if I check with Jenny and have her do a summary on both, and we can include it with your board summary
I think
after
that
the
would be
meeting and
nice.
include it with it?
Just a simple, we asked for this kind of update that we could share with the community. And I think this is right, this is it, but it's a little bit
There's a lot.
too much. So if we could also just share a link to this if people want to see and check the numbers,
Okay.
right? But,
Yeah.
And I think it's already linked in our board packet, right?
Yeah, it is.
But just to make it more
Give us
explicit for
summary.
folks, that kind of that high level, what we're looking at is the do nothing, meaning we gotta keep the same number of students in 5 minutes.
Okay, and then the last thing, real quick, was you asked about transportation. And I did have multiple conversations with Carrie Olson, who's the district transportation coordinator for South Washington 833. And yes, we would have transportation from them if we end up with a separate facility outside of 833. So if we have one site in 833 and one out, they would bus all their students to a designated area at the boundary of the district, and then we would provide a shuttle, that'd be our cost, as we've been talking about, from there to either WLA or to Hudson Road, wherever the other property was. So there is transportation for those students that attend our district of Math and Science Academy or whatever it would be with, if we do merge, or if we don't merge, but build an additional site outside of 833. So that is for sure. That's it with my report.
Couple questions. Sorry, I didn't catch you before on the budget models. And I don't have to run through it here, but I just want to point out that there were a couple numbers, I think, that just need to be updated or were actually wrong. So we can talk afterwards. They're just simple updates. When she puts together a summary, it would be helpful to hear from her any substantial changes that happened from, say, the end of next year till now. Because 6 months ago, 7 months ago, we get these reports and frankly, everything sounded okay. And now 6 months later, we're considering a merger and then all the financials look like we're ready to fall off a cliff. So something happened between then and now to change that whole, conclusion of where we were financially. And frankly, a lot of it was before you even started here. So it was kind of like at the end of last year. May, June, we're wrapping things up. We see financials, and none of them call our attention to the fact that in a year, we're in trouble. And that should have been the case regardless of merger and all these other options. We should have been called, our attention should have been called to issues if in fact those financial issues were there. So it'd be helpful to find out what happened between then and now to have such a difference in our financial outlook.
And I wasn't here, but I
Yeah,
can
you
kind
were.
of speak for some of it. We started the expansion last year. We started adding ninth graders, so the picture last year was, we're getting ready, we're ramping up for expansion. So we brought in more ninth graders. If we're not expanding, we can't continue to do it. We are busting at the seams with 600 and whatever students right now. It's, if you're in building A, there's no, right guys? There's no room in the hallway. I mean, it's just too packed in the classrooms, it's too packed in the hallways, lunchrooms. So we started the expansion, so we did have, 50 more students than really what this building can really
And we were only
hold.
looking at projections with expansion in mind. We weren't
No,
looking,
no,
that's,
they're
I do not
correct.
remember looking at projections other than we're expanding.
We get monthly
Right,
monthly
with-
financials.
Right, but
Monthly
we were
financials.
expanding, that was,
And we had COVID months yet.
Well, we had monthly financials that give us the current view. We also had projections, which, we're building into. But even with 50 additional students, we seem to have, something happened that it took a very different turn. So I'm trying to match up with what we actually did and when we did it and what impacted us to all of a sudden in a year, we seem like we're in huge trouble. It just doesn't match up from a time perspective. And I just want to understand when did certain things happen and what other things we predict might happen to impact these numbers. So,
We're backing out those 50 students again now that we have it in, so that's,
well, we'll get to
That's
that
about
conversation
that's
later.
why we were expanding,
Well,
because
Yeah, but I mean, we we plan that it might actually take 2 years moving to the next building.
Right.
So, okay, so if we continue on that track, we shouldn't fall off that cliff in a year. But we can talk about that during the enrollment numbers. The second piece on the transportation, so, in terms of a summary and kind of following up, what are the next steps? I mean, are we gonna get some written confirmation from 833? Did we put together kind of a plan on how many shuttles we're gonna need, how much that's gonna cost? Because the number of students we talk about moving from here to there is a lot.
And that, she and I will be in conversation as we make a decision if we're moving forward with what we're doing. They, as you know, even during a regular school year, they usually don't give parents their routes till August. So they wouldn't have a designated, all that stuff will come as we build. They would not be able to provide the shuttle, but we can find another bus company. But she estimated about $100 to $150 per bus per day. So if you look at our school year, it's gonna be somewhere between $20,000 and $25,000 per bus, which is quite a bit cheaper than overall, but it's right in around that $100,000 to $150,000 a year for the shuttle buses, which we kind of budgeted. We had been saying along, about a shuttle would cost us about this much. It's right in that ballpark of what we've been saying, so.
So what is kind of the estimate of the number of students that will require a shuttle?
Well, that's gonna be dependent on how many students are not driving or not getting rides and want a shuttle. So that's all gonna be part of that process when we start building it.
Ballpark? 50
75,
students?
60 buses, 6 buses.
6 buses, okay.
So, yeah, if Jenny can help with a summary
Yeah,
that
I will.
looks like it would be good to kind of high level, right?
Mhm.
If we could share it out, I think that would be helpful for the team. Good, other questions? All right. Move us to the next one, and DJ, I think I'll make it brief, because I was planning to recap a little bit, but I don't actually have anything specific. Mine are already on the agenda items, so there's 5 minutes back.
Perfect.
Board committees up next, unless anyone has any questions for me. Switches to board committees, so any questions for the governance this month? Questions for merger? We do have a merger discussion topic. Questions on the meeting, all this questions?
Should I ask merger questions now, or should I?
Well, we have a discussion
Okay.
on merger, so if it's about the notes, I think,
No, I'll just wait.
okay. Anything, then we do expansion, anything for Jeff?
So we squeezed into 2 meetings, gosh, what, at the end of December and early January? It's kind of gone by pretty quickly. We didn't schedule one for January yet, pending some of the discussions on how we're going to handle board committee meetings. So I just want to get a little guidance from that before we schedule the next one.
We were gonna have another one of our external meetings, is that next week? Or was that?
It was kind of an if, pending what we were going to talk about here, whether they needed to actually meet. So, yeah, I would suggest that we, if nothing else, have like a 20-minute recap and make sure that we come together, because it's been about,
NTA,
yeah, it's been like 4 weeks since we had it with them.
Finances, so. Questions? Colin? I did have one question. I saw a note that a letter to the community was put on the website. Was that letter posted?
That's this expansion memo.
Was it put out?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's under the expansion tab.
I couldn't find it. Okay, I looked for it. It's, I believe it, but I didn't know if it was going to be going out or if it went out.
I just want to note that these reports were not reviewed by the finance committee. We did not get them black.
Okay.
So I can't answer questions on those.
So I have a question on, it's the financial report, page 11,
Okay?
where it talks about enrollment. So Randy, you just mentioned we have 612 students, but this says we have 543. I'm confused.
Well, that's less PSEO.
How many students do, what was
It's
that?
less PSEO.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So you were counting PSU. Okay,
Yeah.
all right, okay, got it.
And so basically, are you talking about like ADM numbers?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Yeah, ADM does not count the students that are in the SEL.
Okay, got it.
So that's why those numbers don't match up. I think though for PSEO students do count for lease aid,
Yes.
so.
I just had a process question, not to pick on you, Cody, but the letter that went out, you signed and addressed it as yourself from the finance, which is, but I was just curious, what do you guys think about that? I'm just, because as I was writing, I was like, oh, I didn't know that we had a letter to the community. And sometimes we'll send it out through the admin. But in this
It did
case,
go through admin.
in this case, but I guess I didn't see it, and I don't know the rest of the board. So that was just a question. I'm just asking, how do we want to handle it in general? Because you would generate documents at the financial meeting and post the minutes, right? I think that's pretty normal. But this time it was like a letter to the community.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just, at first I was like, oh, we had a letter go out that I didn't know about. And I don't want to be a control person, but at the same time, I'm like, well, I didn't know it. I would have seen it the first time on the website perhaps. So is everybody fine with that? Because I'm opening the
Which,
question.
the expansion?
It was
memo
just,
letter?
yeah, it was just a memo, and I think the
okay.
intention is fine, so I'm not challenging.
Well, I mean, I was
that.
asked to draft a memo, but I guess maybe we should have waited till today.
I don't want to hold things up to meeting dates,
Yeah.
monthly meeting, that doesn't seem like that's right either. I'm just asking a question to the board, what's the right way to get information out? Is this fine? Should we, I mean, if there's an expansion update, would Jeff write a memo and put it out there and say, this is what I'm seeing?
I did, it was discussed with the administration, though. I didn't just write it, or I wrote it, but then did collaborate with that, so it did go through review.
It's up to us to decide how we want to manage it.
Was it discussed at your finance committee meeting?
We discussed it.
Then for now, let's just say that, like, no harm, no foul, let's keep going this way. I like the idea of autonomy, but at the same time, if messages start coming out from individual board members, we could create some chaos there. That's what I was getting a little bit anxious about was if a message came out and it's like we're marching this way, but then at the board meeting, we all move everyone back this way, that's the risk that we run.
I think at a minimum, they should run it by you. I'm glad that, Randy and or someone else reviewed it for accuracy, but at the end of the day, it's a board decision whether you're going to communicate as a board member. So I think it would be a Dan thing, and I would trust you to say, hey, yeah, you talk to the right people.
Yeah.
Just
Chair thing.
just send it. Yeah,
Not just a damn thing.
Yeah. Then we can blame it on that.
I think that's a good check and balance.
Yeah.
I think so too.
So,
Yeah, we have a lot of things moving right now. We don't have.
One person, yeah.
I don't get a chance to update everyone either until the
Right.
board meeting, so I may have already known something that, okay, that's a hot button, let's wait for a week or so, right? You may, so I think it's wise. Maybe in the future, let's just think about that, just a quick check to me.
And the review might be, did you talk to someone? Are these numbers accurate? Yes, okay, I feel comfortable.
Okay, good, thanks, I just had that question when I saw it. So that was my only question for you, Cody. Do you want to move us to the approval, financial report?
Yep, I motion to approve the financial reports for December.
Second.
Any questions, further discussion? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? So December finances are passed 9-0.
Just for clarification, we are suggesting or we're moving towards that if board members want to inform something that comes out of committee, that we run it by the board chair.
Yeah, thanks for clarification.
Yeah.
So I don't want to hold up meeting notes or anything, all that posts as normal. It's more of like if we're sending a letter out to the community, something like that. Does that make sense? Those are good.
Communication.
And would it be wise too that if we share with the board prior to being sent out, so that way if community input comes back and they're like, well, I don't know anything about
I
this?
think that's how I might do it, is say, you know what, Committee X wants to send this out, I'm saying this looks good, and we're gonna post it to see.
So it comes to the board first before. Agreed.
But it's not like approval, because we can't do that except for open meetings, so it'll be just FYI.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Consent agenda, item 12. And we did, so we left this as is, but we did add a discussion topic.
Yep.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I will second.
Right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? All right. First readings and second reads approved. Next up, the DEI section. So yeah, apologies, we couldn't quite get the workshop, and I know a lot of folks are really looking forward to it, myself included. So we're gonna get it, we're gonna do it right. Just gonna take us a little bit longer, so thanks for hanging in there. So I don't have a recap of the workshop, but I do have our dashboard, and we've given ourselves, DJ, 20 minutes for this topic and important topics. There's a dashboard that's out there. Are you able to bring the dashboard up on the website? Sorry. Are you able to bring the dashboard up, which is 13B, please? Yeah, and I don't know if you make it bigger, if it'll look bigger for those on the, but I can read out here. So, yeah, perfect, thank you. This, just for everyone's understanding, so this goes all the way back, if you go back to the investigative report. The investigative report had a number of findings, if you will, in the investigation, and those ones had recommendations. So we took those recommendations, we've made this dashboard, and this is kind of like the summary of the items that we said we wanted to work on over this period of time. So the intent, you're seeing a lot of green here. The intent is to say that we've made progress and actually done a number of these items where you could almost say those are checked off. It does not mean that DEI is done. One of the future topics will be, what do we do next, right? What's next on the DEI topic? So the DEI agenda item will be a standing item, at least for the foreseeable future here for us as a board, as we try to help set the tone and direction here for the organization. But so specifically, there's a number of items. I'll just go over them quickly. So we have created the board governance. Thank you, Hidel, helping us with this one. So we have a board governance committee. That was a recommendation chaired by Hidel, vice chair myself, and then we do have folks attending. I would encourage anyone who's interested to attend. It can be a difficult topic, right? I mean, these are policies, these are bylaws, but anyone who's interested in helping shape, the foundation, if you will, of the school and how we govern, that's the place to go. So any and all are always welcome. That will continue for the foreseeable future. We have a number of policies we still need to go through. Next up is, revising our bylaws, updating our policies, and setting up the board. So we do have a recommendation. The recommendation was to consider 3-3-3 between teacher, parent, and community ratio. And that's something that we currently have in a draft bylaw state that we'll need to, once we move that forward, talk about more. So that would be bringing in one more community member and kind of balancing the whole board a little bit more evenly. That was a recommendation. We have updated our handbook to include that descriptions for our employees. And then we've also, this is something that I hope you will see as we move forward, and Hedel's helping lead this for us, where we're trying to reduce the redlining and adopting more of the MSBA, charter school policy series. So we're doing a lot of work taking like existing templates and spending probably too much work going through and trying to modify and backfit to our school where that is designed for charter schools. So I think the idea is that we move towards more of an adoption of the charter school policy and amend only the things that absolutely have to be. Even I was chatting you a little bit because we changed every charter school to Math and Science Academy. I mean, even if we can get to just say, can we just leave it at charter school and we are the charter school? So we can just accept the policies. And I think that's in the spirit of what the recommendation was for us as well in the investigation is don't kind of create our own little hill. We're a charter school within Minnesota and we need to follow the generally charter school rules. And if anything is an exception, we take that one.
So from this point forward, we're going to try to incorporate MSBA charter school policy. Are there some now we'll have to go back and change, or not really?
Yes.
Okay. But we can leave them for a while at least, because we just recently reviewed a handful of them. We can leave that towards the end and continue to move forward.
Well, I thought I would go by series.
Okay.
Just so we can, because the 100 series is kind of like that upper establish the school, incorporation of the school's name. And then the 200 series you kind of see come down to the governance board level, code of conduct, ethics, board matters. and then it trickles down, and you get to 600, and it's all very student dense. So I thought if we started at the top and went down to 900, it would really be a very good learning experience for us all and our community to hear us go through these policies and read them along with us. But I think there's going to be some squeaky wheel policies. Like when the vans come, we need to make sure, obviously, we have 710. 709 is actually a district level policy that we have adopted that we will need to rescind because it's district level. And instead we'll need 706. Or I could be totally flipping those numbers. So there's things like that. There's nuances like that that we'll need to stay on top of. 208 was an important one that we jumped to this month because we're also doing the bylaws. So if you know of important policies that are having impact, then bring them up so we can prioritize them and get them established, even if it's out of order. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Good, so a lot of great work there and good plans moving forward. So I feel like we're making great progress there. The academic committee, we had some, how would you call it? We had some misunderstandings between the board and administration, who's doing what. That was a previous kind of finding, if you will. So one of the recommendations was that we kind of disband the academic committee from the board side, which we have done. And now they're more clearly administrative responsibility and we will help as needed, right? So that's Personnel committee had a similar one where the personnel committee was a standing committee that just kind of kept going on, but now it's been refocused to just, like we'll do tonight, we will have a closed session of the meeting where we'll review someone under the authority of the board, which will be Mr. Vetch as our executive director. So that'll be handled as needed throughout the year. Training, we have, and I listed out here, we've approved the money for the DEI training, so we've done one session. We were hoping for another one tonight. We'll get one in as soon as possible. And then we have updated our 3-ring binders. And we have clarified some of the training requirements. Just so everyone's aware, I think my understanding is that reoccurring board members or board members that have been reelected are not required to take the training that was done for the first, but of course refreshers are recommended as your schedule permits. The other thing was the training is up to us to decide, if I understood correctly. So it just said training, the board will take the training, and that's for us to decide what that training is. So I think for now it'll be the sorts of workshops that we have as come up as needed. Nothing written down.
At that point, Dan, it says MSB in there, and we've renewed our contract with MAC, right? Could we advise that the training be through them because it's charter school specific versus traditional public school? Because it was helpful, yes, but.
So MSBA did
They do
have a session that we attended.
Yeah.
So it's like once a year only.
Yeah,
And
I
that was
wasn't aware
good.
of that, and I bet I would have signed up for that.
Yeah, no. They sent us the wrong one too until, we brought it back downstairs, so. But I think it's only once a year to them too.
Yeah, where I think Max offers multiple packs, so looking into that option.
So we did do the conflict of interest signature, and you helped us with that kind of right when we sat down in our first session as the new board for this term. And then the meeting notes we talked about a little bit, just for the community. I'm hoping that you should be able to find our old board packets. We redouble checked those. Those have been linked. We did recently ask that YouTube links be provided if they're not, because it looked like some of the board notes had it scrubbed as remote link or something like that, but just said the text. So and I haven't checked if those are there, but the idea is that the community should be able to go back and easily find what was shared at whatever meeting, and if you really want to, you can watch the YouTube video and find out the discussions. Hopefully that helps supplement our notes and everything. I think we made a lot of progress. I listed down below some of the policies that we have done, but I know a lot more are coming. So the plan with this one is that we'll say that this is basically done. We've accomplished most all of the recommendations that made sense for us as a school, but then on a future topic, we will have a discussion of what's next. Okay? I got to turn it over to you, Randy.
Okay, and then for the staff dashboard. can kind of see, you know, we did our training with Paula Forbes for our staff already. We're looking to continue that for next year. It was great, all our staff really enjoyed that, and it's not a like one and done, it's something that is becoming part of our culture. And we're going to continue with that. You kind of see what we've done. We have a student action group that's meeting and involved in our governance committee as well. So that's a positive as their voice is being heard throughout some of the decisions and the directions that we're taking with our school. We'll see the budgets. So but some of the stuff that's yellow, it's in progress. The green is yet we've done it. So we're still, a lot of this is throughout the year. So we're definitely on the right path and making some great progress. So you kind of see that some of the things that we've done through some of the different goals, you know, the admin logs, you know, also have targeted DIA training, which we've done. So this kind of just gives you an update of all the things that are completed.
Can I ask, who's the equity team?
We have a committee that is,
Okay.
that there's teachers, staff members that make up the equity team.
Okay.
And they're gonna be meeting, one of the things they're gonna be looking at is grading for equity. So that's coming up. Right
And
now,
is
we're
that a
doing a
book?
book study on culturally
read?
responsive teaching in the brain. That'll be our next book study for next year. So we're kind of working towards that. So one thing at a time, but we'll be looking at more equity.
If we talk next steps, one of the things that was a proposal for February was DEI, new policies and objectives. It was for us to discuss in February. One thing that I have seen is a few of the different schools, not even just charter schools, but just like schools have a very lengthy DEI recommendation. I shared one from the University of Minnesota, which was just like, great questions that they're asking. Why aren't students doing this, and why our students can be grouped, doing these activities? And I never really thought about some of those questions. So I thought, what more could we do there, right? So that I was hoping actually to be spurred tonight with the DEI workshop that we come up with some more ideas. And the idea for everyone is that we had the training for about half the portion. The other half was to go through, I think it was a 209. 209 of our policy, or 208, I can't remember which one it was. One of our
208 is our board
board.
structure policy, is that what you meant?
We were going to review it for the workshop. It was 209, was it?
Oh, we were going to do the conflicts policy.
Yeah.
Sorry, I can't remember.
That's all right. But so the idea was to go over a policy as a board together with some kind of coaches to say what are the good questions that we should be thinking about as we review policies. So I think that's still coming. So maybe that can be part of our next steps as well. Hopefully, if we can do this in February, that could be a good portion as a review of one of our existing policies. Any other thoughts on where we can do more, better?
I think we do need to review our improvement plan. I think, 10 minutes, just 10 minutes spent would get us all back on the same page, I think.
Which
The
plan?
improvement plan that the board approved and sent to our authorizer July, I think I said 2021 earlier, but I think it was 2022. I'm not recalling. Yes, it had to be July 2022, because 2021 was spent during the investigation. Just 10 minutes.
Can you forward it to everybody? I don't
Okay,
know where
but
this
We'll
is.
try.
how different is it do you see then? Because what we tried to do is we tried to take some of the core items and put on that green
Yes,
chart.
looking at
One of the admin items is on this gray one.
From a committee perspective, I feel the governance committee was charged with correcting the governance matters that were mentioned on page 9 and throughout, and the policy matters that were mentioned throughout the 10-page improvement plan. So perhaps it is a selfish thing, but I feel like if that was the charge, everybody should be on the same page about it. It was voted on, it was approved, it was read, it was sent to our authorizer. And yet when we sit here, we can't seem to remember the particulars of it.
And maybe I'm just misunderstanding, because I think instead of putting like all the pages down, at least I grab the headlines. And I feel like, this is just me, but I feel like, we've done those and are doing those things.
Oh my God.
So you're saying you'd like to go back through again?
Yeah, I feel that obviously there's the administrative issues that are still outstanding. Polishing up the handbook, addressing the grading issues. Those things were all mentioned in the improvement plan too, but those are administrative matters. So when it comes to the governance matters, board matters, maybe we need to make sure that we are clearly incorporating, not, I think maybe listing them on this spreadsheet is one thing, but collectively sitting here and reviewing that improvement plan, just spending 10 minutes doing that might reground us. Thoughts?
I'm having trouble finding it. Sorry.
Do you know what it's labeled or what it's called?
Is it strategic plan? Is that what you're talking about?
No, that's different. That's what we do every 3 years. It is in the Google Drive.
I think we're looking for a link, that's why.
For this discussion though, I wonder, would it be fair to say the request is that we review this plan, so that could be an item that we could add, because I don't think we're gonna review it in front of, like tonight, right now. So that's a suggestion. Is there others?
What is the name of that document or what we called it in July of 2022?
MSA's board approved plan to address the findings and
Okay.
recommendations.
Improvement plan.
The two are authorized or the authorized one?
Yes, dated July 13th, 2022 with a cover letter.
Okay.
So Dan or Randy, the shared drive folder has not been shared with Teresa, PJ, or I.
Which one?
The shared.
The shared board of directors.
Oh. Okay, we do that while we're here, but. Teresa,
Myself.
and EJ. Oh, okay. Yeah, you guys.
That's why I can't find it.
Okay. Thanks. At least I have the answer. Should have that. The agenda I do keep on my personal drive, so you guys can comment until we release it. But, so that's intentional. The other one should be shared. Good. Any other members speaking?
So in terms of the makeup session,
Yeah.
is it possible, or were you thinking of actually next month then, 4 to 6 before our meeting,
That
or is that a
That would be
possibility?
my hope. I think we're gonna need to follow that up with Paula and.
Okay. Just while everyone's here, it would be nice if someone could say, oh yeah, I can't make it, so.
Do you guys have a preference, so I can do a quick poll, and do you want a separate meeting, or do you want, we've tried to put them like an hour earlier. So 4:15 if it's a school day.
I'm just trying to think what the other agenda items for the next couple of months are gonna be. Because I know we have elections coming up, we have merger stuff that potentially will be taking quite a bit of our time. So it may be beneficial to have a separate meeting for this workshop.
Well, part of it, at 4 o'clock, I didn't know how you guys were gonna make it.
I can't make it at 4.
You would have been late, easily, by 20 minutes or
So
more.
Randy, let's see if there's a day that we can do a special day. That was their preference, I would say, because they didn't want to be stuck on the back side, right, in case we have a good discussion. So-
Yeah.
I just shared the board folder with
Okay, thank you.
At the end of the day.
What's that?
We can't get here by 4, we just need a minute or two.
Yeah, like 4:15.
It's more
4:30, yeah.
4:30.
Okay, so 4:30 to 6:30, something like that? Thursday, we will. Okay. Thursday.
It's pretty
I just have our
clear.
board.
No, I get you. That's
So we'll-
pretty true.
We'll send something out. All right.
We're
Any
at
other
20.
questions? Sorry?
We're at 20.
Thank you. I was just gonna ask if any questions for PEI, otherwise we do have a scheduled break, so I don't even have to ask for approval this time. So let's take a break at, I'm looking at 7:15. We'll be back in 5 minutes.
Okay.
All right.
It's good.
Words on the chair. Some kids love to be at that point.
Caitlin, are you loving?
He's just a motion.
Okay. I have 7:23. Welcome back, MSA community, those of you watching remotely. And we'll get going back on to item number 15. So discussion decision 15A is on the Spanish international trip.
Yeah, there's two documents in there. This was proposed from our Spanish department to take a trip the summer of 2024. So, to, I believe it's southern Spain.
I wasn't clear on which grades. Is it, is it
High school.
Yeah.
anyone in high
Yeah.
school?
I think they have to be a certain age,
Yeah.
if I remember, like around 15 or 16 and older.
So they wanted to, their goal was to get this going so they could have a meeting with parents and start planning, because there's a financial piece to it, that they can start planning and putting money aside for the trip. It'd be nice to get something going again.
The only other question I have, it's expensive. I know everything's getting expensive now, but how does it compare? Do we price any options?
It's pretty comparable to,
To others? Okay. Because that would be my, we're talking $4,000 about, right? Maybe $800. Okay. Anyone else have any other questions?
I know it's probably too early even to consider this, but some other things to consider would be, what would we target for the number of people going, students? I know they group them in sixes to get that free chaperone, whatever, so are we okay with just 6, or are we looking at 12, 18, or whatever?
I think they haven't really communicated it out yet, so once they get,
Yeah.
approval, they can start. If there needs to be a minimum number, we can go from there.
Yeah, let's see, also, age of students I had down. Also, I don't know in the past if we've ever offered it, but I am kind of concerned that this thing is almost $4,000. It's going to be more than that because you have to pay for some meals and travel stuff. So as we consider this, we should also think about ways, I don't know if you would call it a fundraiser or whatever, to allow students to earn some of that money. Because if we don't, I mean,
It's not equitable.
yeah, how many families can shell out $4,000 just like that? At least they have time. In fact, they had the payment plan, I think they said $200 a month, probably starting now, and you're there. But, I know that other high schools, when they pick that trip to say DC, they do it specifically because they can choose an affordable format. That's one of the considerations. So,
I don't want to make extra work, but could that be an option where we had like a couple of things? Like one could be this one and another one could be like a lower cost something. Just,
yeah, and just to open up that conversation. I don't know what the solution is. It's expensive.
it is expensive.
I will say in my experience, I have worked with educational tours and they are a phenomenal group to work with. They always provide local tour guides who live there and know the culture and ins and outs of things. It is expensive.
It's the
But
company
it's a
we used
great
when we took
opportunity.
kids from here to London.
Did we use a group to go to Belize or?
I'm not sure, and I know before COVID, the plan was Australia,
Oh.
and that ended up getting canceled.
Yeah.
So,
Didn't we have students overseas when we did?
That was.
and then they were there.
Yeah.
There's that too. They were in Europe.
And I did comb through their brochure to make sure that everything was included in terms of the health insurance, getting people back and all that. They have a contingency plan for everything, so
Yeah, they're great.
we don't want someone stranded.
Even
And hopefully,
security at the hotel.
yeah, even, and the 3,800, does it include airfare? I assume it does. Okay, good.
It should, I think, cover everything.
Other questions?
I was wondering if we could, thinking about making it equitable, if we could think about maybe some kind of like scholarship program where families or individuals could contribute toward a scholarship program that could be dispersed.
Or even local sponsors, just say, hey, $100 from something, I don't know, contribute every little. could knock off $100 everyone's trip.
Should we have whoever's leading this kind of think about that, just how can we try
I
to
could talk with him tomorrow.
Yeah. But I think in general, the idea is great to get this going again. This is a key educational thing that we kind of put on pause for a bit, so I'm happy to see it coming back. So I guess because we do have an approval, can I make a motion that we approve? Someone want to second?
I'll motion to approve it.
I'll second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, great, so trip should be on, 9-0. Next up, merger committee next steps, so Maggie, any?
Yeah, so the merger meeting minutes, we sat down, we talked, we looked at all our questions and we kind of tagged them where we thought, who are these questions really for? And everyone has such great questions. And so it's hard because we don't all have the answers. I feel stuck. Sat in a meeting today with my department and administration trying to talk about next year, and we can't really plan because we don't know what the plan is, right? Like, will we be able to offer cool electives or not? Are we gonna have to pull back? And so I would like to motion that as a board, we empower admin to begin developing a plan of merger with WLA to bring back to us for a review and a decision. Just so that we can know what the information is and make a decision, because I'm getting frustrated and anxious that we're running out of time without information that you feel you need to make this decision. And that at the February board meeting, they could bring that to us.
Follow-up question, Maggie. As a merger committee member, is your thought that that process that the merger committee is kind of going down is going to take too long to kind of go back and forth?
Yeah.
And inquires and then get answers?
Well, and we have some fabulous questions that I think people really want answers to, and I can't answer them because I'm not WLA. I don't know what they're thinking. I think it would be nice to have open conversations with them about are we on the same page or not? Is this something we should be looking at or not? Do we need to look otherwhere, or do we need to make different plans? As a school, we need to plan for next year. We have to. And right now we're stuck until we make some decisions one way or another. And again, we're not even alone in that. They need to make decisions too. They might feel like this isn't good. But if we don't have conversations with them, I feel like we're just sitting here wondering and questioning, supposing, without getting answers.
To kind of piggyback off that, it's not the board's role to be looking at that information, it's admin's role to go out and find that information, present it to the board. The board looks at the facts and then makes the motion. So I do believe that is our next step, so I would agree with Maggie.
So you're saying disband the merge committee and empower administration? Is that basically
Well, I'm
what you're
just
saying?
having admin talk with their admin and start that, because the state calls it a plan of merger. What does that look like if this happens? Like there's a lot to figure out, right? Like,
Yeah, I agree.
but I'm feeling like I need to know what I'm doing next year. We usually are doing that now. It was more of a,
Well, here's plan A, here's plan
Plan-
B.
but that doesn't help me.
It doesn't help them either.
And again, it's just to, like, what do they know? We get that information. I don't know how else to go about this.
Can I ask, where did we get, I know at one time we planned on having a meeting, it was last week, right? But I know we didn't have a meeting, and I think it was because their board didn't get a chance to meet, right? So where did that process go? Are we saying we don't want to do that anymore?
So we have all these questions, but we can't, even having that conversation, they're not real answers. It's because their board hasn't agreed to meet and have these conversations and lay out a plan. It's maybe it would be this. I don't want maybes. I want, if we do this, this is what it would look like.
Right now, it's all hypothetical.
Yes.
It's anonymous. Here are the facts, here's the data. It's hypothetical.
And it can be a whole band too. I mean, we can still have committees meeting and administration meeting. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, yeah, no.
There's
No.
discussion of that, but I think there is a role for a committee and there's a role for administration. I think that both probably need to be in play.
Yeah, I think one of the things that at least where we left the last meeting, last board meeting started, was that we were going to try to start having some of those back and forth discussions. In whatever format, I think we chose to have a few people from our side and a few people from the other side to kind of hash out some of the questions that we had that we thought was pertinent to us deciding if this makes sense or not for both sides, right? So I think that's still, in my mind, that's still.
With that, I think that's still important to have those committees meet and talk about some of those questions, how are we gonna work together, all that stuff, but there are questions that are much more in-depth, like authorized, like other things that really are admin focused, that we kind of need to start working on some of this stuff. Because like Maggie said, this is the time that admin starts planning for next year. Our hands are tied right now. We don't know what next year is gonna look like. We got a budget, we got a staff, we got a schedule. There's all these things that we're kind of in limbo right now that we can't even start doing this stuff until we have some answers, because we don't know what direction we're going on. Do we need to make it work in this facility, and then, what does that look like? It's just, there's so many unknowns that make it very challenging to start planning.
Our original process, going back months, was determine the information we needed to go forward and make the decision whether to continue to investigate this. Whether we drifted from that or we still need to do that, I do remember that was the conversation, and we just didn't. Maybe the process, we're learning along the way, but we didn't arrive at what those questions were. And actually, I thought the merger committee, with the questions you put together, that was it. There were a couple that were long-term and whatever, but I think the gist of it was exactly that. Do we move forward to further investigate and do due diligence if we could answer, let's just say, 10 of those questions, the really meaty questions? So I don't know if that's changed. What has changed is we are coming, and we have always come up on a deadline. We knew that back in October, and we were trying to hit December, right, to make do we continue to investigate? That didn't happen. Now we're in January. Now if the board has to talk about it more, it won't happen before February. But I'm not sure I want to jump into, well, then we got to put it into a plan because then we got to implement it by all these dates. I don't know if the ship's already sailed on that, to continue to do what we need to do to consider a merger, including due diligence. Due diligence can take months. It's not an easy thing. And due diligence includes independent verifications. It's not just contacting WL. That's part of it. The other part is you got to get public information, and we have to comb through all that. Sorry.
Do you think it would be a good idea to vote on it today then?
No, because we didn't get the answers to the questions that they put together. It's just a simple answer. I think, no, we don't have the information. And we haven't even decided what information were those 10 questions or more. Would that be sufficient to, in fact, move on a vote to further the investigation? We haven't, all of us talked about it. We saw it. I liked a lot of the questions. Yeah, they're going down the right path. Now, if we could have done that back in November, then I think we'd be sitting differently. But we have to do what we do now. And maybe the tough decision is, yes, we want to investigate. We want to look at this. But time is so short, there's just no way to do it.
I disagree. I think if admin meets with their admin and gets some answers, I think we will, I'm not saying we'll have all the answers that will make everyone on the board happy with those answers, but I think it will give enough of us an idea of what we're looking at for next year, if that's what we want to do.
I think we need to figure out is Yeah, some of us are going, is this gonna be able to be done by next year, or do we need to, are the things gonna stay the same for 1 year while we work on this? And even having that answer would help with planning, right?
I mean, it'd be a great step forward if we had some of the detail worked out on something as simple as busing, not simple, I mean, a big thing. We don't. We
But
don't.
haven't given
And that's
admin
big.
the
Yeah,
authority
haven't
to
given
do
them the authority.
They're doing it now, they're doing that investigation
That's what I
now.
would
That's her motion.
Sure, go ahead.
Oh, okay, no, I was just gonna ask, this question is kind of direct towards the administrators. What has like WLA been doing on their behalf? Like on just like trying to know more about the MSA community and like trying to help us out with the merger as well? Because I feel like, Ms. Burgraff's been working like hard, like on the committee and the merger committee and all that. I wanna know like, what is WLA also doing?
Unfortunately, because of the weather in December, they didn't have their meeting to form their merger committee. So their board meeting is this Thursday. So once they form their committee, that's what was the holdup. Then those joint committees can meet and talk about some of the questions we have. I don't see why that can't go on at the same time we're getting some of these other questions on the admin level. We can get both of those ready for the February meeting. So we don't have just the questions from our joint committees. Why can't we get some of the bigger level questions that we also need to kind of make some decisions at the same time? Because the board has to sign off on the plan of merger, the plan of merger anyway. But if we can get the information to the board, plus some of the stuff from the WLA's questions, what do they have of us, what questions do they have of them, we can get all that presented to the board, plus also the bigger things, like how do we merge, can we merge, or do we approve a merge?
So do they have our questions?
They're in the.
No. Does WLA have our questions?
Oh, yes, they have our question.
And did they send questions over to us?
Yes, we got those.
Yep.
Yeah.
So how are we planning on responding to that? I mean, is that a board thing? Because
I think some of the, well, that
I
will
mean, I
depend,
think-
right?
yeah.
So, again, I still think we should have admin talk with theirs, and some of the questions might be admin answers, and some might be back to committee, and some might be board.
And this motion isn't to make a decision to make, yes, we are merging, no, we're not. It's so that we can further and finish this investigation to see if this is a potential option for us.
And I'm trying to think, how is that different from what we're doing now? Because the merger committee was doing exactly that. We have been investigating some of the administrative things like busing and other things. So what motion are we actually making that's different from what we're doing now?
Because you brought up negotiation last time, and you
Yeah.
didn't want it to be a negotiation, but some of these things need to be decided upon and agreed upon. And if admin can talk with their admin to come up with some of those answers, I think that will help us make our decision. Like, do we like what they can agree on, or what they think would work admin to admin?
And if there's some I haven't seen the question, so I can't speak to that. But if there's some things that we can do in that fashion, the other ones board has to investigate and discuss, there's no reason why we can't do that. And I don't know why that would require a separate motion.
So Jeff, are you saying that admin should just go ahead and start answering these questions?
I don't know, I haven't seen them, so I can't say.
Well, that's what we need to know, that's what I'm trying to ask you.
Okay,
Is-
so to answer your question then is, I can't answer that until I see the questions.
I'm hopeful that this would help as a member of the merger committee.
Yeah.
There was a number of questions that were really more geared towards an administrative side of, this is an administrative question. This is a board level question. This is maybe a committee level question. So when we went as a merger committee to discuss, we color coded those questions and kind of separated those out. I would put forward that those questions that we kind of identified were administration, those were the ones that would really be helpful to have those answers to then further the
They're
discussion.
in the notes.
I've seen our questions, I haven't
Yeah.
seen their questions.
No, I hear what you're saying.
I'm not asking about our questions, I've seen our questions. I want to know what their questions are. and maybe they're the same questions, then maybe that's actually better. Then we could both answer the same questions and compare. I don't know. That's the whole process that I have. It's all over the place. I can't glean from what I've seen from meeting minutes and documents going back and forth what we're actually doing. So that's what I'm trying to learn here. So that I can answer Wendell's question, which is,
Yeah, but
what's
I
that
don't
next step?
know- I don't know why that has to be a roadblock for the admin to move forward with continuing investigating
And-
this.
I'd
And
just
the
like to
plan
see
of-
the questions. I
The
don't know.
plan of merger is kind of different from those questions. It's stuff that's from MDE on their website. And I shared it with you, Jeff, when we met with WLA back in, whenever it was. I shared that with everybody at the table there. So here's what the plan of merger is and what those steps are. So that is stuff that we need to get working on if we're gonna, as an
What does
aside
that
note.
timing look like, Randy, in your mind? What will be the most aggressive if everything lines up, both sides happy with this situation?
Well, the merger can't be approved till July 1. So if we are looking for next year, at least to start a merger, which would mean, we would have to have it to MDE by July 1, which means prior to that, we have to have both boards approve the plan of merger. And then we would work with the authorizer that is chosen to redo the school's charter. That's part of the process. The charter would get adapted because of, now it's a district, K-12. And then with the authorizer, that goes to MDE for approval
By July.
by July 1.
And that
And
would
that's
be
for
part
23, 24 school year.
Correct.
What he just said would be a part of what I believe Maggie's asking in this motion, is for them to present that timeline.
If the board needs to approve a plan of merger, can the admin get us that plan of merger
That's
next
what I'm
month?
asking.
And then we review it? Or maybe as soon as possible so we can start reviewing it? And then vote on it next month? The plan of merger that then needs to be sent to MDE for approval?
Well, that first gets signed, then it goes to the Attorney General, then we go to our authorizer, and then we redo the charter. All of that goes to MDE then. So there's a few steps before that, but yes,
I don't mean
that gets the ball rolling at least.
to derail any progress, but it would be interesting, what would a plan look like for the 23-24 merger, and what would a plan look like 24-25 merger? And I just say that because, what's within our control, we need to manage our school with what we can control, and there's some things that we can't, right? Part of it is there's a whole other organization that we're trying to feel out if that makes sense to go together. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but I'm usually very optimistic, but I'm feeling a little rushed to get all that stuff done between now and July, knowing that it's not all our control. We also have to have another organization to come alongside us, right, and do the same thing at the same time. And it maybe still can be done, and maybe we make that progress between now and February, but come February, we just have a couple of months before April and June, right? So that's coming up quick. So I'm just wondering, the next up is the enrollment numbers, right? And so it's all coming together, right? Because we need to make the best plan that we can with what we have control over. Right now we have this facility, so how we get the most out of this facility we can until we come up with a plan, which I think, Jeff, to get back to your question is, I think we've decided that the stay is not an option. The stay as is not an option. Let's call it like that, right? Stay in the current site with the current number of students, that's not feasible. So mergers so far, we looked at many. Merger is so far the leading candidate for us until something else comes that looks better. But merger is what we're kind of moving the organizations towards, and I hope the comfort parts of it as well. But it's just how fast can we do that without making too big mistakes. So I guess that long answer is, I like the idea that we still have this sit-down session together once, if they decide that they want to still have that, which I guess they decide on Thursday, then we can have a meeting thereafter together, the original question and answer session. I don't see why the administration can't continue to kind of go through and see what would it take and lay that out for us. February discussion. I don't know, what do you guys, anyone else? I agree with the sentiment that we kind of keep kicking it down. There's different reasons and there's valid reasons, but we kind of keep pushing this decision out because it's a big one, right? It's a big one for us. It's the biggest one, I would say, that we've probably done in our history of MSA, right? I mean, joining together with another organization, that's huge. Shouldn't be taken lightly. So that's why I can tell that we're all in different spaces as to how fast we should go down this path.
I mean, one way to compare it is, you know, if we had our way, how much time would it actually take to do what we are in fact proposing to do? And, you know, implementation, planning, putting everything together, even if we knew and approved a merger, would take normally, my guess is at least a year or more. Just even knowing we were going to merge, you know, kind of developing the plan, curriculum, budget, I mean, you just name it. And we are in a unfortunate space of, okay, now we're faced with trying to make enrollment decisions, right? And we get that, but, you know, just where we are in the capacity of what we're able to do, and even a merger document. The merger plan, from my experience, I'm thinking it'll take months to put that together, and the due diligence to support it.
I disagree.
Due diligence also, that's part
Plan a
of it.
merger isn't gonna take that long. What they're asking, actually I already have it completed almost, you know, waiting for it to be done, so, if we need to move forward. But we have to get with WLA and finish it. There's some things that have to be joined, so it does not take that long.
It will, if there's a lot of
If there's the planning, I don't see it taking a year. We already planned curriculum. They plan their curriculum, we already are planning our curriculum. Nothing's gonna change that. As far as some of those other pieces, it's just part of the budgeting process. Yeah, it's very accelerated, but it's very doable.
I would just
I just
like,
think long terms, you know.
you know, we have this issue of not being able to stay in the black. And we are the poorest of poor public schools. We are a charter school. That is our culture. I'm sorry, but it's just true. We're a broke charter schools. All charter schools are. So if we're going to do, I totally see the validity of your point, have a merger plan. And then if we're looking at the following year, how are we going to bridge our almost doubling red deficit? Right, I mean, you know, to delay an opportunity would be abhorrent if we compromise the viability of our school. We have to accept who we are. That is, we are a broke public charter school. We have to do a lot with very little.
And I get it, it's scary. You know, there's a lot of things going into this and we don't know. But we have a history of kicking things down the road and it's hurt us. We should have expanded 2 years ago. We didn't. Now we're faced with raising rates, increased building materials costs, and we can't get where we could have got 2 years ago. We delayed, we kicked it down, we continue to follow this pattern, and it's not making our future brighter. It's making it scary. And I don't know if we wait another year, is it gonna, I don't know, but if you look at our past history, it hasn't helped us at all.
Yeah, and sorry, Randy, I don't mean, and that's why I said I don't want to derail any of our momentum. I just might be interesting to see the path, what would the path look like if we were to approve it for next year? And you're saying, you know, by July 1, we need to have these documents done. And then I was just curious, what would it look like for the following year? And I'm thinking through more of that next question with Roman numbers. What does that mean for us in our school for one more year, right? And because that's kind of what, in my mind, is kind of helping crystallize that decision. Like, you know, we've suffered through 22, 23 with overcapacity here, and it's not been pleasant. And we're withholding a lot of the future for these kids, right? I mean, we've talked about all the things we want to do with our expansion plans. So another year means another year of students who don't get to benefit from that, or teachers that don't get to teach.
Well, but we're out COVID money. We're out, we will have to decrease what we can offer next year by waiting. I mean, that's.
Sorry, I'm not advocating waiting. I'm just more curious, like, what would that look like what does that mean for us?
Do you want to jump in the enrollment number? Are we done with the merger discussion?
Well,
Or do you want to make a
yeah, as long
decision?
Well,
as-
I want to pass, I would like to make the motion that we empower admin to begin developing a plan of merger with WLA and bring it back to us for the February board meeting.
Does that mean that we,
That they bring back a plan so we can see it.
Ms. Burgoff, does that mean that we would still have the merger committee as a thing, or?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
I'm not saying that that disbands it
Mhm.
all, it's, that has an important role. But there are those admin questions that I would love to have answers to.
Yeah.
So I can make because right now, this terrifies me. So if this is a way to look at this, and I'm not saying it's easy, and that all the answers are gonna be exactly what I like, but I would like to know what they are.
We have a strategic plan that says we're going to do certain things. We have to raise teacher salaries. We have to increase programming opportunities for kids. We need learning spaces. We can't do that if we keep going negative. I mean, we've invested in this administration. We have a full, robust administration. We need to leverage them to hit our strategic goals.
At the time we put together the strategic plan, you're right, those are the goals, and we chose one option. Expand through physical space. By merger, by what, well, not merger, actually expands physical space by either building on this, looking for new property or whatever. And that's where the conversation stopped. And at that point, we could have considered, and I wanted to consider, but we didn't. So now we're left with no strategic options, and, you know, it's been another 4 months where we could have actually dug into it and looked at merger, because this was brought to us way back in September. Now we're 5 months, 4 months down the road, and we haven't even looked at that.
Let's get busy.
So that's the strategy, right? That's a conversation that's strategic. And you're right, let's dig into that also, but we just
I second
don't.
Maggie's motion. That's
So
what we're
for
doing.
tonight, then any other discussion on this motion? Maggie's motion to have that and then come back with a detailed plan or we're going to whatever. Then I will put that to the vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
No,
abstain. So passes 8 to 1 negative. Okay, anything else from the merger? Okay, but the committee, we're still having that meeting?
I would like to.
Okay, and then we'll have that come back. All right?
Shoot. Can I throw one thing in discussion there, or are we past that? And I know you have the questions, can they be front and center as part of their discussion? Certainly, because I think those admin questions would help with some of the other questions that people
We have a
had.
copy of those.
Yeah,
That's
so
good, yes.
I would love answers as part of that plan. Sorry, I should
That's
have
fine.
added that
Follow
1
along,
minute
and you
further.
have- If there's information, no need to wait for the board packet. I think that can be shared out as it's ready. So we have a chance to kind of read it, right? And then officially the board packet.
could you repeat the motion again?
To empower administration to begin developing a plan of merger with WLA and bring it to the board for review and decision at the February board meeting.
And that's gonna include, conducting proper due diligence and whether.
I'm sorry.
Is that gonna include the time that it'll take to conduct proper due diligence on this merger?
Are you suggesting like a timeline?
Yeah, just from a timeline. I'm just trying to understand what the plan's gonna include. Is it going to include due diligence, or we're gonna forget that?
Couldn't we hire counsel to do due diligence
We
for us?
could. I'm not even getting to who's gonna do it. I just
Yeah.
wanna know when and how.
Once we see the plan of merger, wouldn't we outsource the technicals?
I mean, we could, that's what I'm saying.
County review.
So what would we actually be voting on next month?
It could be yay, nay, it
Merger.
could be a further
I
investigation
hope
on
it's,
certain
do we do
components.
this or
Right.
not? Sorry.
It could be a yay, we move forward with this, nay, we don't, or it could be we need some more information on certain items, and that's what the word decision entails.
At least that way our teachers can start planning for the next year, or we're not wasting our administrators' time.
So when would due diligence be conducted?
After we vote, yes. Because if we vote no, then we don't need to go there,
True.
right? So if we vote yes, then obviously we need accounting, we need bonding, we need,
That should be detailed in the plan. There's
yeah,
certain steps that need to happen.
maybe the resolution that we vote on should be a little stronger. Maybe it should be not that they begin, that they do,
That they develop.
that they develop a plan.
Okay.
And we want. We want,
Sorry, the town, or sorry.
we want a full, whatever the merger plan is, we want.
Somebody's using the
So should I,
Plan of merger is. I think you said begin.
I did say begin.
Yeah, so maybe if we just take out the word begin.
amend the motion?
Sure.
Second.
You better be right.
I did the first one.
And DJ did the second.
Yep,
So you're okay to amend it?
I'm okay, I'm seconding,
You're seconding,
take out,
So we're taking
begin.
out
Begin.
out. Then we'll read it again without beginning.
To empower, the board will empower administration to develop a plan of merger with WLA and bring it back to the board for review and decision at the February board meeting.
Yep.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
No,
abstained? Okay, well, that was 20 passes. All right, let's go on to enrollment numbers.
All right, you had a copy of the numbers, so in the event, well, we have to go this direction right now because we don't have other options right now. So we need to set these because our lottery is coming up February 15th, prior to our next board meeting. So we have to vote on what our caps will be. So the recommendation is cap of 80, and I'll explain in a second, 6th through 10th and 75 through 11th through 12th. Right now, we currently have more students in those grades than those numbers. We are not kicking any students out. We're gonna maintain whatever our enrollment currently is, but we will not add any students unless the number drops below these caps. If that makes sense. So for instance, we will, well, except for sixth grade, we'll just bring in 86 graders and then we start a wait list. Right now, there's more sixth graders than 80 going into seventh grade, so we will leave it at what it is, who's coming back. But we will not add a position until it gets underneath the 80 threshold. Because we have to start working towards that 550 mark, and it may take us 3 years. So we're gonna slowly move in that direction where we won't add students until we drop below these amounts, because we have to get to 550 because of the stress of the building and how many students we can actually with class sizes and those.
We're over 600 now, right?
Yeah,
What number is it?
604 around.
604, so it's a case passes the recommendation.
And some are not coming back, there are some students that are not coming back, so we would just, attrition's gonna be kind of that piece, but we won't be able to bring in until they drop below those marks.
And a normal sixth grade year, how many would they-
Well, how many do we have last year?
We took 92.
92.
but that was heavy, or was that normal?
It's just, it was a little pusher, it's the class size of 23.
92 was what again?
Sixth grade.
Sixth grade.
So
This year has.
we'll bring in 80, because actually, the numbers in the past, we could bring in more lower grades, because we're losing in the upper grades, but we're retaining which is awesome, right? We're retaining our high schoolers. So in the past, we used to have some attrition in the upper grades, so we could bring in more in the bottom, because they leave at the top, right? But now they're not. So very few are leaving in our high school, so we got kind of minimizing the amount we can bring at the bottom, because they're staying all the way through if we have to stay at 550.
So I understand we need to make a decision on the numbers, because
Mhm.
everywhere we do the lottery. But the one outstanding thing, right, is the merger discussion. If merger were to happen, and optimistically that's next year, how would this change?
We could bring in more students. We
From the
could,
waitlist, or?
well,
So we would offer to
We
people
could-
further down the lottery?
well, we'd have the wait list, and the longer we wait though with the wait
Of course,
list,
they're gonna be
the-
on other schools.
they go to other schools, so sometimes you're not able to get them back. So depending how quickly we make a decision, we can add more. If we were to merge next year, there is a possibility we could have our middle schoolers go to WLA next year, because there's space there, the location. And we could just have high school here, and then if we needed to do some construction here, we would be able to do it, because we wouldn't have as many kids. So it gives us some options to add more kids if we start it.
It's not the decision we're making tonight, I'm just
No,
using
but
it to
that's-
think through what.
yeah. And that changes these numbers, but right now, that's not a given, so we have to go with what we know.
Do we know how many have signed the intent to return? Have you factored or taken a look at that?
Joelle has all those numbers, but so where we're at right now with those. So we'll be losing a few kids, I think she says it's like 592 next year.
She always has the teachers like listening.
So if it's 592, then we're maybe 40 over what?
Yeah,
we would like
we'll
to
slowly start, and there'll be more, sometimes they say they're coming back and they don't, right? That always happens too. So we'll just have to kind of just see what happens between now and, if we don't do anything else between the start of school, what that number is. But we can manage sixth grade right now.
Last one for me, we had bumped up the ninth graders, I think, last year in anticipation of expansion. So I'm only seeing five more going to 10th grade. I mean, I was expecting a bigger number than that.
Well, there's more.
There's more than
It's
that.
There's more than that.
Yeah.
But to
Yeah.
get to 550, that's what that number would be.
So slowly move
It's
it back
just
down.
until it would get down to 80, below 80, we wouldn't add anybody. So it would be more than that.
Yeah, because there's 40 more kids that are not represented in this one. So
Right.
They're mostly in ninth grade, probably.
Kind of staggered throughout,
Right.
more ninth grade.
So, sorry for interrupting, but the hope would be if we had some plan at the next board meeting before, so, the board approves the lottery, and then from that number, then we send the letters to families. If we had some idea of a way forward, that we could responsibly keep adding students if we had planned for the next year or the following year, you could change this enrollment number, what would be to get it to.
Could almost be like, I'm just thinking out loud, you could have like a guaranteed spot and then like a potentially pending, some board changes.
Well, and because the lottery happens on the 15th, right? So we draw and we order everybody, but we don't tell anybody if they got in or not unless they were at the lottery until after the board meeting. So the hope would be that we could make an adjustment at the next meeting if we had a plan for how to accommodate the students.
Just a clarification, that you said there was 40 going to be 10th graders that aren't represented here? And so is the
40
number,
Kind of 40 throughout, not just.
okay, so is the number 550 right there, or is it 590?
It's 590.
It's 590.
We have to get some
Just
back
our
to
base.
5.
No, I got you. I'm trying to, are we going from 620 all the way to 550? That then does make some,
3-year.
major-
Staggered down.
thank you, just it would be a
We'll get that.
pretty
What
over,
about that
pretty
list
overall.
stage? If we're gonna go down to 550, isn't the goal
We already,
always?
we have access, Lisa.
We do.
We do.
How, where? How does that work?
Because Lisa is,
It's
we have
per
extra
people,
Lisa,
isn't it?
right?
Okay, so for right now, we do, because we're spending less money, because we only have $8 million in bonds. So with our enrollment, we easily make those, and we basically we've been leaving money on the table just go back to the state. We're spending some of that money right now to pay for our contracted owner's rep, architects, building people.
The way Lisa work is it's either a cap of a dollar amount or is it 90% or 95?
90%.
90% of the expenses. So it's capped out at the 90% of our expenses. We don't. Does that make sense?
No, I feel like we're going to lose the per pupil money that we become dependent on, so are we?
Not for lease aid.
Not for lease aid, but
So-
for,
For the
funding.
general budget, yes, and in these projections and the finance committee's job will be to say, these are our numbers, and this is the new budget for next year.
Okay.
So we're obligated, I don't know if I'm using correct terminology, but to pay 10% of kind of our expenses. And right now, lease aid exceeds that number, so if we were to take the 90%, we do leave some money on the table because we paid the 10% out of our own pocket. That's what we're supposed to do.
To summarize, I don't know the exact number offhand, but there's a number, we can drop down to a certain number and our lease aid stays the same because we're only getting the 90% of our expenses, not the full amount per student. Does that make sense? Okay.
So following up with what DJ just said in terms of understanding, so are we really talking about a cap or are these minimums? And why, if in fact, we're really talking about 590, we put 550? I'm kind of confused. So like for instance, ninth graders, we have 112 or so, I think according to our numbers, we have 112 ninth graders. According to that chart, we have to winnow down to 80. So what am I
In
missing?
3 years,
What was that?
in 3 years. We're not gonna kick anybody out to get to these numbers, but if we're not gonna expand or do anything, we have to get to this number. And there's no guarantees we're doing anything right now, so we have to look to the future. So we're not gonna add any kids, 7th grade through 12th grade. Whoever comes will be here. We won't add until it dips below those marks. But in 3 years, that will be our caps.
See, that's where it confused me. You just said, we won't do anything until we get to that number, but that's our cap, when you just described what a minimum is.
Jeff, I think in this case, they mean it's a minimum.
Well,
Well, it's.
I guess, I don't know. Maybe I'm just confused with terminology in this case.
Well, it's,
our enrollment numbers are higher than those right now,
Correct.
right? But we have to get back to 550, we're not doing anything. So once our numbers drop, we're not gonna add a student back into those grades unless it drops below 80 or 75
In 3 years.
in 3 years. So we're not adding any 7th through 12th graders until any grades enrollment numbers are below that amount, because then we'll add to 80 or to 75. Right now, they gotta drop below before we can add.
And how
So
is the
the
5?
attritions is gonna be the natural.
Should take care of all the,
Is
So-
gonna bring us down eventually in 3 years,
so why 550?
because that's what it used to be before we started expanding.
Because that's what fits comfortably on this location.
We don't have room for all those kids.
We weren't comfortable for the past 10 years. 550 is way higher number than we feel comfortable, so how did we choose?
Well, we have some PSEO kids in there too,
Right.
so.
I think there's comfortable and then there's, we're definitely, it sounds like we're definitely now not comfortable at all. Too packed, too big. And
I would say that, I'm happy to hear we're not kicking students out, right? I mean,
That's a good start.
That's the right approach. And I'm disappointed, I think we all are, that we're not bringing in more students, right? Because we have a lot of students that I think would benefit from MSA. And so that's why we're here trying to figure out how do we do that, right? Figure that out. But in the meantime, we have to have a reasonable number. I'm hoping this doesn't need to stay very long. So, but I think we need to approve something tonight so that we have something to work off of with our spreadsheets in February.
because if we either merge or find another location,
We will come back.
now we have the space and we can.
So like you were saying, Kate, a potential option is if we decide and we have some more clarity on future planning, we can come back and revisit this number and offer up more spaces. So I feel better about that than going backwards and taking the numbers back down. Because I agree with you, that doesn't sound like the right direction we want to go, but it's a reality. I guess any further questions on the 550 or the enrollment numbers?
So at 550, what is kind of your projected ADM?
Depends how many kids are in PSEO. Probably right now we've got about 50, so it's gonna be probably around 498 to 500.
Which is what our ADM currently is.
It's 540, 544? 544 right now, I want to say it is?
498. What exactly was the
I
projection?
think we have about 10% of the total numbers in the PSC.
Yeah, I thought it was 498.
Well, according to the
Actual is
sheet, 540,
498.
it looks like 544.
Sorry, 544 this year.
544, yeah.
Yeah, 2022, 23, 544.
Yeah, it's 544.
Oh, we've got all these.
We're budget at 544.
Right, yeah, sorry.
590.
I swear I know how to read these, it's just,
There's a lot of
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the recommended enrollment numbers for
a second.
40 seconds. Further discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No,
Abstain? All right, passes 8-2. All right, open meeting law refresher, so try to get us back on track, TJ, right? Because we're already on the
A little over.
I'll make it quick then. So for open meeting law, we had a number of good questions. I will just share a couple examples. One was agenda creation. So agenda creation, just so everyone is aware, for those of you who aren't, and maybe more on topic, but I will post out a draft agenda. Maggie, myself, and administration, Randy, will come up with the draft agenda. We'll open it up for comments for the whole board, so the board can comment and provide if there's topics or what have you. That's considered, at least from how I see it, as procedural, which means how do we create the agenda that we're talking through here now? And that'll be covered in open meeting law. So that is done offline, or it's done online, but it's done off of the YouTube and off of the open meetings. Another example came up, which I think was a good question in the merger committee one, if I use that one. So I asked the question of when does the board get a chance to put in, our questions, if you will, into this document that will be shared with another organization. As far as I know, we've never had anything like that. So anyways, we started doing that, but a question was brought up, and a fair one was, hey, now is the board having a discussion in the document, right? Because we have access to boards creating. And so the question could be, is this also forming an agenda or a discussion guide or what have you for a meeting, or is it actually like making decisions and deciding things? So refreshed legal opinion we got in 2021. So in 2021, you guys may recall the pandemic. So we had a pandemic and we asked for advice on how do we handle the virtual meetings, how do we handle open meetings, what do we do with all this. At that time, the advice was given that an open meeting is required if you have a quorum. So for us, that would mean five board members sitting and discussing, and then also if you're making decisions. So they gave a couple of examples of cases that were tried in Minnesota where a quorum of the board was not present, and also the tasks that the members of the board that were doing were more procedural, or they used the word advisory, so they were advising, right? So the decisions would need to come back. So what we're recommending to the board is a couple of fold. One is that we're not trying to run away from our obligations of open meeting. We can't run away. That's the rules for open meeting law in Minnesota, so we have to follow those. Every meeting should be a possible broadcast openly or allow folks to attend. What we're trying to not dissuade is we've had a lot of participation from our community virtually. And that's, people are able to Zoom in, dial in, a governance meeting, expansion meetings. These meetings are happening, and I think people are providing feedback virtually. And we're running this line where if we switch everything over to open meeting, where basically we would not be able to allow that anymore. We would require everyone to be in person, so you'd have to probably come to MSA or some open space, like a library. It can't be your house. You can't dial in from your house. It's not considered a public space, even if you post it, it's at my house. So we're trying to keep all of the engagement that we have had through the pandemic and try to encourage that. We're trying to make sure we stay open, but I am advising us that we can keep our committees as advisory, and how we do that is we don't allow a quorum, so we cannot have 5 board members at any committee meeting, all right? And then the other thing is we're not making decisions at committees. The committees are bringing recommendations and advising the board to make the decision. And if those are the 2 main things that I read in the legal advice, and I'm not a lawyer, I read those 2 things. If we can maintain those things, then we can continue to operate with our advisory committees meeting as you have been, and bringing forth decisions to be made here. So please, try your best. I mean, I don't think any decisions are being made, but except for the procedural stuff of like writing agendas, what are we going to talk about, what do we want to bring forward for decisions. So I just wanted to share that with the community because I think I had a couple of questions of clarifications on how things are run and how we're making sure that we're following open meeting laws. And that's the advice that we're given, so let's try to continue to follow that one until something changes. Questions?
To your point, kind of reviewing the MSA expansion merger updates, in that latest update, the way it's worded, we have to be very careful about, and actually should probably take it off the website. It says, due to space limitations, this meeting will not be open to the general. We technically can't say that. Could say we encourage people to participate in the live stream, but just the way it's worded, it's very dangerous. So I would encourage whoever updates this site to maybe change the wording on that.
Yeah, you guys, as you run your committees, you do it as you see fit, but it's the most efficient way to bring the feedback in. But I think there's been a lot of value for people being able to dial in if possible. And then, like you mentioned, some people would prefer, and maybe they don't have access to a computer or whatever, so they would like to come in person. So if possible, and your committee allows, having someone here on site would be great. And mention that as an option, and then also the virtual meeting.
So looking at it from a different perspective, so there's no kind of magic, because before we said, oh yeah, it's a board committee. Therefore, we have to follow the normal open meeting law. So in your kind of summary, the title we give the committee doesn't govern the fact that we actually have to follow open meeting law. It's the advice, or were it considered advisory to the board? Is that it?
Yeah, I would say we have to follow open meeting law, but I think the way it was defined, the example that was given, I thought was quite interesting. There was a University of Minnesota case where some of the members went up and they were to find out who was to be elected for the next position that they were looking to do, and they went through and screened applicants. Right, you'd get a stack of resumes, and they were going through that. They came back with a recommendation to the board, and they were challenged to say, you were making decisions outside of the board meeting, and that's not allowed, right? You're not following open meeting laws. And actually the state of Minnesota came back and said, no, they were advising. So they went through and they came back with advice to say, here's the candidates that you should look at and make the decision on who to hire. So I think that's similar to us in that like expansion would go off and say, I'm looking at a few different options, right? And I need to bring that back. There are inherent decisions, if you will, being made, but they're not the big decision like merge or not merge, state or global. So does that help?
Yeah, I think the way you presented it too is it comes back as a board decision. Sometimes you might say it's a recommendation. I don't know if we have to go that far, but to Wendell's point, yeah, I mean, we have to be careful in some of the language and, inadvertent, we said some of those things. So in our meetings and our agenda for committee meetings, we have to stay away from perhaps voting. Maybe, I don't know. It's more of a kind of a consensus. You're in the meeting, you look at, it's like, does that sound good? We're going to present this to the board for a vote. I mean, those are kind of those little things we may want to do and remind ourselves so that we don't accidentally make it look like we're making a decision with even fewer than a quorum.
I think the governance committee had a nice example where we're saying, the green is the font that we're kind of thinking this looks about right, but here's a couple of the other examples that we also considered. I think that would be a nice way of saying, what, board, help us with this decision, here's the recommendation.
That fits the Regents University of Minnesota fact pattern because we're bringing options, right? We're bringing options or we're bringing information. I think what the governance committee has to be careful of is how do we work the consent agenda? And do we have clear guidance on that? Because I do not want to violate open meeting. And I just don't think it's worth it.
Well, and even aside from the open meeting law, I think some of the other guidance we've received is on the policies, maybe we shouldn't put things on the consent agenda. Now, if we put it in the discuss and decide and no one brings up anything, that's fine. But to kind of wholesale put up 10 policies, what happens is it leads us not to read them. I mean, we had that issue years ago. It's just too easy. Consent agenda, yeah, fine. No one even bothered reading them to know whether I'm cool with that. So
I know, Jeff.
it's kind of the slippery slope, right?
Remember, that's the job. We have to come prepared. right? We have to read.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of helping or making it too easy.
Well,
for
that was
people.
one policy, it showed one page, and I didn't realize that there was supposed to be more. So,
Yeah, but that's just a technical.
that's more of
issue.
a technical issue.
Yeah. But, no, I mean, I fundamentally, that's great because, to your point, Dan, I think we have actually more participation than ever.
That's what I've seen. And it's not saying that we can't. I would say follow as much of the open meeting law as possible. I mean, posting your agenda a few days ahead of time is good practice, right? And notes afterwards is also good practice, so we're not trying to get rid of that. I would say if you need to make decisions, there's nothing stopping us, then we just have to follow the open meeting law, which means all of those things must be done, not just nice to have. So if you need to have decisions made,
I just
before it
have to
comes to
follow-
board,
yeah,
then you
just
have to follow the open
follow
meeting
open
law.
meeting law, yeah.
Yep.
Then it can be done. We're just trying to allow some flexibility, but still follow the law.
So to kind of transition to the next topic, the finance committee does sometimes make decisions like who our auditor is gonna be, and like approving our tax documents. We typically, like the finance committee will approve them, we do bring them to the board to show you guys. So those meetings we always do open. So,
But by that you mean posting?
post the
ahead of
agenda
time. Yeah.
and 3 days ahead of time and all that.
But officially, I think it still gets approved in the.
Yeah,
board
does the
packet.
full
A lot of
board
the stuff
vote?
we do bring for approval, but some of the smaller things that are decisions, like who our auditor is going to be. Or some of that, like some of the stuff I sign off on as the treasurer, like I sign it, not the board chair. So when we discuss those, so we've always just done them as open meetings. So we're catching that.
I think that's a safe thing to do. Okay, good. Well, thanks for the time, for more than 5 minutes, sorry, DJ.
Oh, I have one more question, I'm sorry. Collaborative documents.
Okay.
You know, the committee right now, the governance committee, will have a draft of bylaws. And I will circulate it to the committee and ask for comments and feedback on the sidebar, the comment section. Yes, no, stop, keep doing it.
Good question.
So I can actually chime in on that. I talked to MSBA about that a little bit and just for their suggestions. And it's the opinion piece. It's not even the looking ahead, preparing for a meeting, or even making changes, saying the hell and she'll put them in. So when we start having that discussion of why I did that, and maybe we should consider that, and that's all good, but then that engenders a conversation. Is it possible to work on a Google document and not be accused of that without like these little side opinions? That's a gray area, but maybe one we're willing to live with. But if you do put your opinion that guides, language to be taken out or put in, then you step over the bounds. It's just kind of an odd thing.
Yeah, I definitely would, we shouldn't have 5 board members
Yeah,
doing that.
let's start with that, and maybe
So-
that
so-
answers
And
that
then right now, I
question.
think it's you and I, are you on that one too? I can't remember.
I'm probably, yeah, but we're not at
So we have
quorum
3.
yet, though.
No, but I'm just saying, so I mean, we can't have 2 more, right, for sure.
Right, it is discussion, opinion, collaborative, sometimes, I mean, it's governance matters, it's heated.
Could it be committee and then view for other people? So like, then if I did have a question, could I just email you?
Oh, I only send it to committee members.
But like for the merger committee, I said then sent it to the board. Should then you have been view only? And then, so you could see it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because that's fine, right? And then if you had a question, could email me or another member of the.
Well, when you start having those emails back and forth, then
That's
that's where
that'd be
you
a
run the
problem.
risk.
Okay.
That's where you run the risk.
Okay.
And
But you could still view it ahead of time? That would be fine, right?
I think it's also being conscious of what you're saying instead of saying, please elaborate, maybe please be prepared to elaborate at our meeting.
yeah.
Just being conscious of the verbiage of how you.
So content does matter. And you kind of envision having that conversation in your head. It's probably a conversation.
So be careful of that. And I know I had some comments on your document, more like thought-provoking ones, like, think about how this or think about that. But then it invites a conversation, right?
Right.
Well, what do you mean by this? And it just kind of carries on. So
But if you direct it to at the next meeting, then
Yeah.
it has to stop there, and if it does continue, then whoever created that agenda could delete it.
Right, yeah, you almost prove the point by responding. If you don't, and you keep it at first level, you make the comment, everyone knows not to respond, hold it to yourself, then that's probably okay. And certainly when you don't have quorum.
And I think, are these, the serial email stuff, is that still an issue that we need to be aware of, or you don't reply all, because then that can be viewed as a conversation? Even, because I think when I first started, we even had an email where it was just everyone responded, yes, I'm coming to the, or everyone responded yes, but we still treated it.
Well, the reply all to, a couple things happen from that, because when you, first, like when you do the whole blind copy thing, then you can't accidentally reply all, right? Because a reply all will not hit the BCCs. So that's why that's general practice. It had nothing to do with not showing people who you're talking to. It's that automatic thing of not sending automatic messages to everyone.
Like an example of tonight, I wanted to make sure everyone knew not to come at 4. So I'm going to email everyone, right, and say, please don't come at 4, and if you don't respond, I'm going to give you a phone call. But that, I can see that procedural.
Yeah, but
That's
there's a way to send your email, and then as soon as somebody looks at it and closes out of it, it sends you a notification saying that it's been viewed. I mean, that could just be like, I saw it, I understand, I have an issue with it, I will reply.
I was getting back to the, because I'm not big on the read receipts myself personally, but I was trying to get back to, I don't feel like I'm trying to make any decision, I'm trying to inform. Time?
40 minutes has turned to an hour 20.
Okay, let's move. Okay. Thanks, TJ.
Yep.
So next up, Cody on finance position.
So as mentioned before, I'm resigning. My career is getting too hectic and I cannot do this position justice anymore. So as treasurer, me stepping down means there's a vacancy, so we need to appoint a new treasurer. Would anyone want to volunteer?
I will volunteer.
Okay.
Did Shawnee hear back from the bank about that?
Yeah, we got to take care of it.
Do I need to do anything else or am I?
No, Shawnee and I will take the person to the bank.
Okay.
We can do it that way.
And then I'll have a meeting with you at some point, just kind of go over you have on your binder covers more than go cover those minor points. And then,
So just a quick discussion. So I think a couple points. One, so thanks for your help, Cody, all these years, and we're certainly going to miss you. We have, so we will have 8 members. So I just want to talk through that quick. So we're allowed to operate with 8 with the shorter community member, which is not ideal, but we just want to put it in everyone's mind that, you know, our next elections will be coming up. We'll be talking about those in the next coming months. We had already talked about having 1 more community member, so now we can think about maybe having 2, something along those lines. But I guess, so in this is one is, do we have anyone else interested in, I'm not saying that we wouldn't do it, but anyone else? And then the other one is, are we as a board okay to carry on with 8 until we do the next official election? Because that's what I believe our policy, our bylaws actually would have us do.
Is the majority still 5 in an 8-member party?
It's 5, it's fully not even.
because it's
One more than half.
it's one more
it's one
than
more
half.
than half.
To have a quorum, our current bylaws say that you need to have a majority of elected members present at a meeting. So we get caught up in 8 or 9 members, you still need 5, but the truth of the matter is, under our current bylaws, what matters is of the elected members, our majority of them here. So Cody, you were elected?
Yeah.
Yes, so who do we have left that's elected, so we know to track their attendance? 1, 2, 3, 4. So we need 3 of you to show up at a meeting in order for us to have a quorum.
And we have discussed in the proposed that we
Yeah,
get
the new
rid of
bylaws are
the
changed.
appointed versus elected.
But they're
But the
not,
old
they're not
bylaws are
adopted
still in
yet.
effect, yeah.
Yeah. So it's fine that we don't have, you know, even if we didn't have any community members, we would be okay. We have to watch that quorum number, which for us is very particular.
So anyone else want the finance? We'll take it. And then, are we okay with the waiting with 8 until?
Yep.
I mean, so we're not doing anything otherwise?
So if we don't appoint somebody, we continue with 8, but we're choosing to leave a seat open for a semester, essentially, right, until July. Is that in line with our fiduciary duty to provide representation, full representation to our stakeholders?
Well, I think the question comes down to if there's no one volunteering to fill the position, then I think I would say yes. If there are people that
So
are
should we post
volunteering
it?
to be represented on the board and you're denying them, that's a different matter.
We
So
can
is that a
certainly,
duty to
we can
post
certainly
it?
post it, and then if somebody brings their name forward at that next meeting, we could discuss appointing them, because it will be for the remainder of Cody's term.
Which is 2.5 years.
I just, to even leave it empty 6 months, just, it would be community.
Would be community.
Community.
That's the current bylaws for the community, and if we do amend it, it would be another spot for it.
Well, either way, because you have 2.5 years left, the board would appoint, right? I mean, we appoint if it's today or if we wait 6 months. The board would be, that's the procedure for bringing someone in. The board would appoint that person,
You
right?
know what, Chuck? You can't, that's right, if he has to, you can only elect a seat every 3 years.
Correct.
So we can't, so
So
even
we
though
have to
election
appoint
is,
somebody.
sorry,
So-
it's all just coming together.
Right, right.
It has to be
Okay.
appointed.
Mhm.
It has to be appointed, and then the time pressure, where it kind of goes away, right? So the waiting really is not relevant. So we should put it out right away and just say invite.
It's like committee members.
And,
Using
but,
the other one,
yeah,
the other
If the
community
seat was.
positions, but
But
that's
the,
not.
but the separate question is, okay, if we just don't get anyone, like 0,
Yeah.
then we'll have to cross that bridge when we get there. That's a totally different issue.
Well, I do want to add, so we are kind of talking about an alumni association. I will kind of try to be involved with that. So when that gets started, if there's still that vacancy, we might get other alumni that want to come and help.
So we'll make an appeal to the community, if you know anyone that's not a staff member and not a parent or guardian, you would qualify as a community member, we would love to have your help. And I would like to make a motion then to accept Cody's resignation.
Well, first, let's appoint the new treasurer. Because then, once we accept my resignation,
Is he done at that moment?
then I'm done.
Or
Or we-
at the conclusion of the meeting?
Or I guess, yeah, if we word it as, I guess in my resignation, I did say conclude.
Yes, we've done it.
So,
So accept the resignation at the conclusion of the meeting, appoint Wendell as finance committee chair. Can I get a second?
Oh, I'll second.
Wait a second,
He's
you're
president.
appointing him as, you would be
treasurer,
Okay, you said finance committee
Yeah.
chair.
Oh.
which technically that is, the
Well,
treasurer by
that's,
default.
that's one of your jobs.
Yeah. And then, is that a conflict of interest for either us to vote on that motion?
Yeah, yes.
Or, well, no, but we.
I mean, unless we're close to a vote.
Okay. Just wanna
Because
make
you're
sure.
resigning, so you're stepping down.
Okay, yeah.
So I would have to abstain.
Second.
Okay.
Can I get a second on that?
I would.
Please, a second. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Aye. So Wendell abstain. Motion passes 8-0 to 1. Good. Board training.
Did you include, you include the appointment, I'm sorry.
It was
The
both.
appointment was in both, yeah, the resignation and appointment. We gave 5 minutes, if we can, just anything else that we want to share from the board training, we say, second notes.
Yes. I just wanted to say it was a good session. It's probably the only charter session that MSA puts on, so do consider it. And they also, when you get into their website, check out their services. They offer advising, audits on policies. I think Heather, you saw that. They gave us some at least conversation on the whole open meeting law and what's considered serial conversation. And even talking about hiring. They kind of confirmed. I actually asked them, and then they confirmed that, for instance, like involving a a director hiring the next director, they said no. No, we're not done. So it's something to bounce off of. Also, situations where, what is in fact something the board should consider, right? So you're talking about something that has an impact hugely on budget, some curriculum sped, we've been involved in that. So they said, yeah, board should be involved in that and consider, their input, and you can talk about voting. So kind of were to apply that for us, most recently, like last year, conversation about block schedule is absolutely something the board can look at, should look at because of the impacts on some of those things above. So it's great having just kind of the feedback on board structure and what we do.
Anything else? Thanks, Jeff. So then we added 15G. I got this here as equity, inclusion, I think with the idea to discuss the policy. I don't know, Jeff, if you want to-
I'm not really prepared to talk about it tonight. I just wanted some time to think about it and to go to the training and get more information there and then think about it. It's just such a big new policy that I just wanted some time. And I don't know if anybody else feels that way, but I think it would be beneficial. I don't know why we need to rush into it.
And actually, I did have questions. I think a lot of this language is borrowed from 833's policy. Is that where it came from, or?
That's true. Yeah.
Some of it, yeah. Okay, so some things that kind of cross, I have no clue if they had even conversations about it. But number one, if you read the literature and recent articles about the use of the terminology BIPOC, I personally don't think it's inclusive enough. And there are articles written about that, so something to consider. Let's think about that. Similarly, Black Lives Matter. I mean, I think everyone approves and looks at that and says, hey, yeah, we understand what the group was trying to organize and the positions they were trying to put forward, but the history of it is it's also a social movement, highly political. So there are many articles about being very careful on how you integrate that term and what they stand for, because they stand for more than some of those underlying tenets. It's very expansive, and we have to be careful.
What do you mean by that, Jeff? Like what you were saying?
Well, this isn't referring to the organization or the movement. It's just saying like Black Lives. It's just a statement.
That's just it. Be careful how we use it and make sure if in fact that's a term we want to use, or if there are more expansive or inclusive terms to use rather than calling one specific instance, because there is a lot of other things that surround that, the group, the organization, as well as those terms. Something to consider. This is specifically racial equity and inclusion policy, so we kind of have to ask ourselves, is that in and of itself expansive enough? We're not considering, I mean, do we have another policy specifically, that talks about things like this having to do with physical disability or other inclusiveness of other groups, whether it be gender identity, right, LGBTQ+. Not addressed in this for a specific reason, but anyway.
Well, so I do see like we have some of the gender and marital status and all that kind of stuff, sexual orientation under diversity, but
Right.
I don't see any of those other definitions anywhere else.
Right.
So I'd like to see that added.
That was a quick review of, 10 minutes of reading this, and I think there are more. So to Jeffrey's point, I think we ought to kind of take some time, soak it in. We have to do our own personal reading on things that are beyond this too. And it would have helped actually to hear a little bit more and be DEI trained. That might have actually tickled more, concepts and thoughts for us to consider. So.
Would this just throw it out there, would it be an interesting one to have Paula or Robin review with us?
I think
There we go. Yeah, exactly.
When are we
We
getting
said
next
policy.
week? When are they coming here?
It was supposed to be tonight, and they couldn't make it tonight.
So when is it going to be rescheduled?
So that Randy's gonna help us try to find a new date, but hopefully it's next month.
Within a
I
month.
believe it was due to illness, so we'll have to kind of see when she's better.
Right.
Petal, do you see number 5 is blank? I don't know.
Probably just a typo.
Typo?
Under definitions?
Under definitions. Oh, sorry, definition, under 3, definitions, number 5. I don't have it.
Yeah, I did notice that. I can't find
Okay.
it right now, but I did notice that.
I have 5, I have diversity.
Yeah, I must have
Oh.
got a new copy now.
Okay.
That's been loaded.
With
It's diversity.
with the people that are supposed to come in for the training today, when we do, I mean, I know you guys probably don't know, like, when we reschedule it, would it be for another board meeting, or would it just become a special workshop day where we just would do that training?
That's what we're talking about. It sounded like I heard folks say maybe a special day. But I think it's up to us to decide. The nice thing about having it on one night is it's one night, but it makes for a long night, which is why this agenda was shortened, because we were gonna have 2 hours of workshop ahead of time.
So what works for you as a student? Is it okay to have it on a day that's not a board meeting? Yeah, I know, I don't want to tag on more stuff to you guys.
I gotta stop.
But, I mean, we can certainly ask them if they wanna take a look at it, because I think they were already planning to go over the 209 with us.
This might be more relevant.
I will say that, 102.1 was drafted, brought forth by our students with the blessing of our administration. I know it's not perfect, and the kids want to make it better. At the committee level, we did discuss DEIA, accessibility, not ignoring or putting one diversity group above another. And how do you balance that with what these kids, what this diversity group has done? So the thought was to allow our GSA kids and hopefully some representatives that can help our SPED kids bring forth some amendments to this policy. So in my heart, I cannot stop advocating for us to pass this policy and accept that it will be an evolution for us. It will just evolve and be better and better and better. If the word policy bothers you, what it is it's an initiative. It's an open door initiative, right? Yes, we have Title IX. Yes, we have harassment. We have all these civil rights that are guaranteed to all of us. But what this does is it fixes, where it solidifies actions at the roots. So what does it hurt any of us, any of our diversity groups, any of our staff, any of our stakeholders, any of our community members to allow this policy to have its place? Even today, we could pass it emergently.
We're gonna start losing sight of all the emergent policies we have, and we don't do better to try to nail some of them down.
What
That's what's
emergent
gonna
policies
happen.
do we
And
have
here,
other than
in
the ones that
fact,
we're mandated to do, which is
let me
510?
finish, excuse me, let me finish. So, I listed some of the things, the usage of specific words and some concepts. So if you're basically saying you don't care about that, then run a vote and we can vote on it. But me personally, I think it's worthwhile to have that extra work, talk to some of these other groups and make sure that they're included. Because right now, we exclude them. We exclude them.
Jeff, are you referring to, when you say that there are words that are being used that you don't like, that you think might take it out, are you talking about the Black Lives Matter? Like, what's it?
Black Lives Matter, BIPOC, not including LGBTQ+, and not including physical disabilities and other possible marginalized groups.
We need to
So,
keep moving. It's a very important topic. I think all the sides are, bringing up good points. One is we need to come to the meetings prepared, right? Means we can't, not to pick on anyone, but we can't say, I don't like that topic, I'm not prepared to talk about that topic because I didn't read about that topic. We have to have had done that. And we also have, we basically need a form. This is our form to ask the questions. So I think before, just to take this as an example, as we're forming the agenda, if we're uncomfortable with something that's on the agenda, then that's the time when we need to say, that needs to be pulled to discussion, or at the beginning, like we tried to tonight, that needs to be pulled to discussion, then we can discuss it. But, and we need to make sure we also follow a good decorum here. I understand people are getting excited and passionate by it, but we're all volunteers here, so we need to make sure that we're treating each other fairly as well as we have these discussions. But I think it's also fair to bring forward something. I'm trying to think, in this particular case, how do we make the progress we do? And I mean, you have your governance meeting, people can share emails, even though I don't want to be sharing emails, but I mean, if they have concerns or questions, those can be brought up before the meeting so that we can make the progress during the meetings, right? But this is just one example, but I mean, it feels a little dysfunctional for us to pull things off and kick it down. I'm open to suggestions, but
These are the kids telling you what they need. These
Can I
kids
just say
are
something?
telling you what they need. No, I'm gonna speak over everybody. I'm going to advocate right now.
But we heard that point. Is there?
My
We
point
have
is, I
mandates.
was
The
prepared,
board
I
will need to
read
establish
it,
systems to prevent
but the
recurrence of
training was
findings.
canceled. That's not my fault.
It's not your training dependent. These kids cannot wait around for your training to happen.
I am
We have a
on the
mandate.
board
The board
just
will
like
need
you
to
are.
establish
I
systems
just
to prevent
can't believe-
recurrence of the findings, prevent recurrence. What do we have at the governance level since July that prevents recurrence? You think I'm just trying to pass emergent policy here and there for no good reason? That is shameful of us. We were told what to correct. These kids are telling us what they need. They're not asking for money. They're not asking for reparations. They're saying, give us a little support. Dr. Hinton, give us a little support, Mr. Vetch. Here's what we need. We need help closing our achievement gap. Do you understand that these policies that they're bringing forth might be the key to closing our achievement gap? It's not more studying. It's not more worksheets. It could be this social emotional support that we're supposed to provide. This could be it.
We waited nearly like 2 years
Yes.
since the since all this happened, and we released the We Demand Systemic Action, and we haven't had a policy that really addresses all of this stuff. And it's like, okay, well, 2 years, like seriously, like that's why I suggested the idea of this having being proposed passed emergently, because we waited too long. We've seen what MSA has become when we don't have something that's really guiding the system, and we're fed up. So
I mean,
I think, go ahead.
I want to add on to that. I mean, you can say, and I understand where you're coming from, Jennifer and Jeff. You want to read through and see what this is truly saying. But I mean, it's literally written down. You can see that this is just trying to better just the community as a whole and MSA, just and making the kids feel safer here. Because I know that, I mean, if you just read it, it's just to make everybody feel more included and have a more equitable space. And I mean, me as a student here, for my middle school year, I did not feel that. I felt I will just put it out there. I was suspended for a week, and including my Thanksgiving break, just for play fighting with my lunchbox with my other friend, and that is not okay. And now that I realize, being older, I mean, this just has to be put out there. And I mean, every single kid deserves to feel safe in the school that they're in, and I feel like this proposal just reinforces that idea and makes it solid out there that we are for you guys, and we're here to support you guys as a school. And I'm not saying that we have never said that before, because I know we want the best for every single student here. I just feel like this will just make it rock solid that any student can just refer to this.
is this really too much to ask for? This is the bare minimum. This is like you said, this is not perfect. We're gonna be adding on to this. This is a living policy.
We're rushing into it though.
Well, we're not rushing into it. This is 2 years overdue. We should have done this 2 years
Yes,
ago.
they're begging to end disparate treatment.
I really think you need to lower your voice.
I cannot.
Don't,
I cannot.
Please don't
I
yell at
just
people.
cannot. You have one diversity group. Yes, it's one. Jeff, you are absolutely correct. I feel the same. What about our SPED kids? What about our LGBTQ? They are not ignored. I feel it too. Am I putting one above another? We talked about it at the committee level very passionately. But I cannot ignore, and we should not ignore that we have one group that got it together.
Yeah, but
The
you're
most
asking
impacted.
you're asking us to vote on intent. And I'm looking at the words and it needs work. And don't play it as I don't care, that I'm pushing it down, I'm kicking it down. I can't control that, I'm sorry. So,
But what about
everything
the
you guys want to do,
action?
Joseph, I support. I like this.
Okay,
So don't take this as a criticism for anything you are in fact supporting or want to achieve.
I understand that.
Right?
I hear what you're
So
saying.
we've had this for less than a week, and we can't discuss it outside. So we come to this board meeting and we're trying to do our best.
Okay.
And if you want to make a motion, fine, and if people want, that's fine. But my opinion is we cannot continue to look at things, and we're ending up voting on intent, not the words. So one of these days, we're gonna come back and we're gonna look at this, and we're gonna have no idea what we actually meant.
You
Well,
say
here's the
intent,
thing.
but when we look at this policy, it says like the intentions of MSA is to be inclusive, to be more.
Right, but
And-
the
and
words,
also-
there are a
That's
few
it.
words that we have
Okay,
to
here's the thing
actually
about that. You're
amend,
saying
okay?
that those few words, like for here, we believe that Black Lives Matter. It's not saying that we believe in Black Lives Matter. That's Black Lives Matter. Can I let me finish? It's saying not we believe in Black Lives Matter. It's just saying that we believe that Black Lives Matter. Just period. Not matter more than anyone else here. Not matter more than your life. Just matter. It just matter. That it's not saying we believe in the movement Black Lives Matter. They're just saying because I understand what you say. It does have a history. It does have with reoccurring situations. But the way that it's worded here, I don't think if you were to truly read it and like just say that we believe that Black Lives Matter, it's not saying anything more
I
than that.
truly read it.
Can I take
I disagree.
So I think good discussion. I'm happy to hear the different feedback. I think hopefully everyone's happy to hear the thoughts. I believe we did a first reading, right? I mean, we left it in as a first reading.
I'd like to make a motion to emergently pass it.
Can I finish? I had all I asked. So I believe we had a first reading. So to your question, have we done anything? Maybe not fast enough, but we've had a first reading. I would like to talk about what would it take to get to the second reading. So what steps are needed, if it's wording, if it's whatever, and how do we do that? Because I think I don't see why, my opinion is I don't see why in February we couldn't come back with the second reading like we do every policy. First read, second read, and everyone gets a chance to do their feedback on it. Would that be okay?
I think we
I'd
should
like to
emergency
second
approve
Kyle's
it this meeting and then keep on working on it.
Because
Because
we
this
can-
is the first draft. Like, we emergency approve it and then the governance committee comes back and says, okay, we met with these people, we did this, and here's what we want now.
I'd like to second Heddle's motion.
Okay, further discussion?
What's the motion?
Emergency pass.
The
Rachel,
first
I-
reading? The first reading, John?
So
The
essentially, the
policy.
motion is to pass it right now and ignore a second reading.
And then it'll still need 2 readings. But it will be in place today for the kids, for the staff, for our community, for the betterment of us.
Well, don't you need a second reading?
Yeah,
How
we
does that
pass it
work?
emergently, and so it's in effect, but then it still does need to go through 2 readings.
Point of clarification, can it be amended in between the two readings?
It will be.
Okay.
That is the whole point of getting something in place, and then it will evolve. And these
I would
kids
like
aren't letting
to-
anything go. It's gonna evolve.
I would like to add a point to the conversation. One topic that's come up quite a bit with merger and expansion has been culture. This policy is culture. This policy is what these kids need. So that is why I support Heddle's motion.
And some board members are so fixated on like some of these statements, but they're simply just statements. Because when you look at the rest of the policy, they actually like address systemic issues and work to resolve what MSA has failed to address. So
And it can always be changed. With some wording that you might not feel comfortable with, we can always change that. It's not final. It's not the finalized thing.
One clarification, just so that helps me with my decision, is when I was clicking the link earlier, I saw like red lines, racial, and this and that, but that's not on what is there now. So what did I read? Did I read an earlier version? Because it's hard for me to approve what I read on Sunday versus what I open up now. And I'm not saying anyone tried to do anything different.
That was an earlier version, yeah.
Okay, so for me personally, I'll just say, I like the second read where it's like cleaned up and this is what you're approving. But I'm also okay if we approve it, that we make sure that we get cleaned up. That was my question to you earlier, is why did it say Rachel here, but Rachel's crossed out and why, because I was not clear on what we're trying to do. Okay. And I don't see it on the current version.
Yeah.
So any further discussion on the motion to emergently approve? I'll put that to a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So we have, hold on, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 opposed.
No.
1, 2, 3, 4. So is it 4? Did I count 4 before?
You had a 5-4.
5-4 passes. Okay.
I want to note that I'm voting no because what was given to me in my board packet was that version, not this version. And I feel I cannot vote because I did not have the time.
Yeah, so nothing against the initiative.
Yeah, it's not against the initiative, it's.
So emergently passes, and then my understanding is we'll please provide any feedback, wording or otherwise to you, Adam, and we'll get that cleaned up. Thank you. Can I move us on to future board items? All right. So the recommendation right now, unless you guys tell me otherwise, and we can of course change it, is that we'll have hopefully the training that we're supposed to have tonight. We'll do, we just kind of covered a little bit of policy and introductory discussion here tonight. Plans for elections, and then March an okay timing for bylaws? Yeah.
Yeah, I was
Close-ish.
kind of hoping for February.
That can be February too, whatever you, so,
Okay.
okay.
Feb's gonna be pretty packed.
February, we back with the merger.
I mean,
It's got a lot of policy coming.
no, I'm sure.
It's time. Flexible, you let me know.
Elections, at least some of the planning for that, getting that started. Plus and minuses for tonight, or didn't?
I think in compliancy with the code of ethics, we do need to be more prepared for discussions.
So, yeah, to a quorum, I think if we can just try, we're all here volunteering. But I love the emotion, let's just channel it the right way.
And to Paula's point, it's a tough conversation, but it has to be. And so we appreciate you being this way.
I
Yeah,
do want to
DJ.
mention though, I mean, I don't want my comments to be construed that I'm actually against anything that you guys have said, right? I mean, it's not about that. You know, in my experience, I do try to make sure procedure and policy is followed for specific reasons, so that we don't bleed off or drift off into doing things that it's too easy to drift over into passing things we don't need to pass, or not nailing down what we really need to discuss. And I think we ought to be careful with that.
Okay, anything else? Otherwise, the next section is a closed portion. And so we will be closing the meeting pursuant to Minnesota State Statute 13B, .05, subordinate 3B, to evaluate the performance of an individual subject to the board of authority. So at this point, if you're not on the board, including students, sorry students, I'm not asking you to leave. And Caitlin, if you could turn the we will come back. Questions clean. Those of you in the public, if you guys would like to get a closing statement, you're welcome to come back in, otherwise you'll be in the notes.
Okay, you're good.
Okay. Back on? All right, then I am going to close the closed portion at, we're saying 9:30? 9:30, so I'll turn the recording off. And then I would like to open the meeting at 9:30, make a motion to open the meeting at 9:30.
Second.
Second. Okay, I guess all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, so we'll reopen the meeting at 9:30. And the meeting was closed, pursuant to the Minnesota State Statute 13D-05, subordinance 3B, to evaluate the performance of an individual subject to the board's authority. We have now opened the meeting back on. YouTube and recording and video should be on. You want to switch back to the screen? To us? Okay.
We're good.
Okay, good, thank you. So now I would just like to read the statement. So Randy, great start to the first half of this school year for us. Thanks for all your hard work there. Moving forward, just continue to take control of your position and further grow into this role. So thank you.
Thank you.
Then I believe I will make a motion to adjourn at 9:31.
I'll second. Oh, sorry.
I want to second it.
The last one.
Yeah,
Last-
I'll defer, totally.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes, meeting adjourned at 9:31. Thanks everyone, and thank you for watching.